Let us not forget everything that happens. It's by the will of Allah. Holy will. It's time to unite and stand, and we will be the best amongst men. It's not time to be extreme or duty unthinkable, but to stand together as one. Tune into Sunnah followers, streaming every day, various platforms. Trust me, you'll find a way. Sunnah followers. It all begins. Assalamu alaikum. Sunnah Followers, in association with Aris Institute, presents to you an intensive foundation in Islamic studies. We welcome Dr. Ali Shehata, who will be teaching the science of the Quran and the Hadith every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, streaming right here on Sunnah Followers.
Inshallah, everyone's fasting is going well. Bismillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi, amma ba'd. So inshallah, we'll continue with the same format that we did for the first 5 weeks of the class. So we'll begin with Quran, inshallah, and Hadith, and finish with Usul al-Fiqh, inshallah. So today's session on the Quran is going to be about the ahruf and the qira'at. So we talked a little bit about qira'at a few weeks ago, but inshallah today we're going to have a little bit more in-depth discussion about it, inshallah. So we have the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam عن أبي بن كعب أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان عند أضاة بني غفار قال فأتاه جبريل عليه السلام فقال إن الله يأمرك أن تقرأ أمتك القرآن على حرف فقال أسأل الله معافاته ومغفرته وإن أمتي لا تطيق ذلك ثم أتاه الثانية فقال إن الله يأمرك أن تقرأ أمتك القرآن على حرفين فقال أسأل الله معافاته ومغفرته وإن أمتي لا تطيق ذلك ثم جاءه الثالثة فقال إن الله يأمرك أن تقرأ أمتك القرآن على 3 أحرف فقال أسأل الله معافاته ومغفرته وإن أمتي لا تطيق ذلك ثم جاءه الرابعة فقال إن الله يأمرك أن تقرأ أمتك القرآن على 7 أحرف فأيما حرف قرأوا عليه فقد أصابوا. So in this hadith, it talks about the ahruf of the Quran. So the translation of the hadith is that Ubay ibn Ka'b, he reports that Rasulullah was near the camp of Banu Ghifar. This is a place in Medina. It's like a small hill in Medina where Banu Ghifar used to reside. So that was kind of like their neighborhood. When Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and said, Allah has commanded you to recite to your people the Quran in 1 harf. And so The word it should not be dialect, should be harf, since we're going to talk about it. Upon this, he said, I ask Allah for pardon and forgiveness. My people are not capable of doing such a thing. Then he came for the second time and said, Allah has commanded you to recite the Quran to your people in two harfs, or harfain. Upon this, the Prophet ﷺ again repeated, I seek pardon and forgiveness from Allah. My people would not be able to do so. Jibreel came for the third time and said, Allah has commanded you to recite to your people in three ahruf. Upon this, he repeated one more time, I ask pardon and forgiveness from Allah. My people would not be able to do it. He then came to him for the fourth time and said, Allah has commanded you to recite the Quran to your people in 7 ahruf, and in whichever harf they would recite, they would be correct. Okay? So here we see how the Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ in the 7 ahruf, which we'll talk about what that means in a moment. And the next hadith, عن Ubay as well, so the same companion, عن Ubay ibn Ka'b, قال ما حاك في صدري منذ أسلمت إلا أني قرأت آية وقرأها آخر غير قراءتي فقلت أقرأنيها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال الآخر أقرأنيها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقلت يا نبي الله أقرأتني آية كذا وكذا قال نعم وقال الآخر ألم تقرئني آية كذا وكذا قال نعم إن جبريل وميكائيل عليهما السلام أتياني فقعد جبريل عن يميني وميكائيل عن يساري فقال جبريل عليه السلام اقرأ القرآن على حرف قال ميكائيل استزده حتى بلغ 7 أحرف فكل حرف شاف كاف. Subhanallah. So, in this interesting hadith, another similar one, it was Ubay ibn Ka'b, he said, I had no confusion in my mind from the time that I accepted Islam, except when I recited an ayah and another man recited it differently. I said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught me this ayah. And the other man said, the Messenger of Allah taught it to me as well, but they were reciting it differently. So I went to the Prophet ﷺ and I said, O Prophet of Allah, did you not teach me such and such ayah? He said, yes. The other man said, did you not teach me such and such ayah as well? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes. Jibreel and Mikael, alayhim as-salam, they came to me, and Jibreel sat on my right and Mikael sat on my left. Jibreel alayhi salam said, recite the Quran with one way of recitation. And Mikael said, teach him more until there were 7 modes or ahruf of recitation, each of which is good and sound. So Jibreel was teaching the Prophet ﷺ, and Mikael was telling him, teach him more, tell him more ways to read the Quran, and he did that. So what are the ahrufan? So the best of the scholarly opinions concerning what is meant by the ahruf of the Quran is that there are 7 ways of reciting the Quran where the wording may differ, but the meaning is the same. The wording is actually different. And Ibn Mas'ud said, it is like one of you saying, halumma aqbil or ta'al. They're all different ways of saying come here. So they all mean the same thing, but they are actually different words. So it seems that the 7 ahruf were revealed with different wordings, as indicated by the hadith of Umar, because Umar's objection was to the wording, not to the meaning, as we'll see in the next hadith, the hadith of Umar. عن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت هشام ابن حكيم يقرأ سورة الفرقان في الصلاة على غير ما قرأوها، وكان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقرأنيها، فأخذت بثوبه فذهبت به إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، فقلت يا رسول الله إني سمعته يقرأ سورة الفرقان على غير ما أقرأتنيها، فقال اقرأ، فقرأ القراءة التي سمعتها منه، فقال هذا أنزلت، ثم قال لي اقرأ، فقرأت، فقال هكذا أنزلت، إن هذا القرآن أنزل على 7 أحرف فاقرأوا ما تيسر. So this is Hadith of Umar. It is important as well, similar to the Hadith of Ubay, where Umar, he heard Hisham ibn Hakim reciting Surah Al-Furqan in a way that was different from how he used to recite it. So Umar, he knew Surah Al-Furqan, and he heard Hisham reciting it in a different way, different to the way the Prophet ﷺ taught him. So I was about to argue with him while he was praying, but I waited until he finished the prayer. Then I tied his garment around his neck and seized him by it and brought him to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and said, "O Rasulullah, I heard this man reciting Surah Al-Furqan in a way different to the way you taught me." Rasulullah ﷺ said to him, "Recite it," and he recited it as I had heard him recite it. And then Rasulullah ﷺ, he said, "Hakadha unzilat." It was revealed like this. Then he said to me, "Recite." So I recited it in the way that he had learned it, the way that Umar had known it. And the Prophet ﷺ repeated the same. He said, "Hakadha unzilat." It was revealed like this. This Quran has been revealed in 7 different modes or ahruf. So recite it in the way that is easiest for you. And so all these hadith are high in degree of authenticity. So now here's the issue. Hisham ibn Hakim, the one who's reciting in this hadith, he is Asadi Qurayshi. He's from the Bani Asad clan of Quraysh. And Umar was Adawi Qurayshi. He's from the clan of Bani Adi, also of Quraysh. So both of them are from Quraysh, and Quraysh had only one dialect. So they're not reciting in different dialects. It's not that they're reciting with different pronunciation or a different accent. They're reciting different words. Okay? Different words. And that's very much why Umar was upset. Umar would not be so upset if he heard the pronunciation being different. But he is upset because the wording itself is different. So the wording of the surah itself was different. Now, what we have to understand is that the meaning did not change. So if we put it into modern terms, okay, it's very hard to understand this concept, but it's not that complicated at all, especially when we consider English. So if we consider the English language, do you go on a vacation or do you go on holiday? Do you live in an apartment or do you live in a flat? Do you put your groceries in the trunk of your car or in the boot? Do you live on Main Street or do you shop on Main Street or do you shop on High Street? So these words are all the same. They all have a similar meaning, okay? But they're very different. I could ask you, did you see that man? I could say, did you see that bloke? Did you walk on the sidewalk or on the footpath? Did you plug into the wall outlet or did you plug into the PowerPoint? Do you stand in line or do you stand in a queue? When it's dark, do you use a flashlight or do you use a torch? Was the employee fired or was he sacked? So the first word that I'm using in all of these examples is the word that is used in the American form of English. In the first four, the second word is British English. And the second six, okay, that is Australian English. And so what you will find is that they are very different words. And for somebody who doesn't have background in this, it might be very confusing to them. So if I said to somebody, I was on holiday and I was renting this beautiful flat that was right on the beach, and luckily, when I arrived at the airport, I was given a car that had a huge boot, so it could handle all of my luggage. And even though we were on the beach, we were very close to the high street for, to go shopping. Um, I was glad that I remembered to bring my adapter for the PowerPoint. There's a lot of people in the United States that would be like, I have no idea what you just said. Like, you said some words that I understand, but other words I don't understand. Does that make sense? Does that help? Hananza here, what do you think? So this is like an example of the ahraf, is that some of the tribes, the Arab tribes, they were using certain words for certain concepts that other tribes were not using. In the same way that the Americans and the British will use, or that they have separate terms for things. So this is what's remarkable about the Quran. What's so remarkable about the Quran is that Allah Azza wa Jalla, He revealed the Quran in 7 forms like this. So the Quran itself used to be quite, when you gather all of the Quran together, when Abu Bakr, when he gathered the Quran together at the time, at the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he gathered it in the 7 ahraf. So the Mus'haf of Abu Bakr was in 7 ahraf. So it was like 7 languages almost, subhanAllah. So the tribes at the time of the Prophet ﷺ did not speak Arabic in the same way. Okay. So they had different wordings. Okay. So many tribes had different ways of reciting Arabic words. Okay. And the Quran addressed them in their individual dialects while at the same time delivering the same message. So this is a literary and linguistic miracle of the Quran. Okay. For Arabic speakers who received it first. And from the wisdom behind this is that the Quran in 7 different ahraf made its recitation and memorization easier on the local tribes. Because again, if you're trying to get maybe a simple uh, person in the United States to understand or to memorize, a text which is in British English, it will be much harder upon them because they say, I don't exactly understand what is being said in this passage. I can memorize it, but I don't understand it very well. There's a lot of words here that I am not familiar with. So the Quran itself was huge. So what happened to them? We do not have them anymore. The 7 ahraf do not exist anymore. So after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, Islam spread to, the places where non-Muslims were. So it spread out to the Persian Empire and to the Roman Empire, to non-Arabic speaking places. And these ahraf were spreading due to the fact the companions who recited them went to different places and they were teaching the new Muslims how to recite the Quran. So each region started to adopt a harf based on the companion that went there and his recitation. So during the rule of Uthman, so we had Abu Bakr, who gathered up the 7 ahraf. We had Umar, who was responsible for a great deal of expansion of the Ummah. But then during the rule of Uthman, the 3rd Khalifa, he started to get news that Muslims were fighting with one another, as they always seem to fight about everything, right? Which day is right for starting Ramadan, which recitation is better and more correct. So they were fighting with each other regarding the ahraf, that my harf is better than your harf, and my harf is more correct than your harf, or so forth. And so, but they not have their they were no longer important because Islam had grown so much that it was no longer necessary. It is our specialty for sure to fight with one another about everything. So Uthman thereby he wanted to eliminate these variant ahruf because of the potential they had to cause permanent division in the ummah. So he compiled a standardized text which was based on the original the harf or dialect of Quraysh. Okay, and that was the dialect in which the Quran was first revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and is the one that he recited himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know that, right? Because we know how the Prophet ﷺ would review the Quran every year with Jibreel. And so this is the one that he himself used to recite, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Uthman ordered the distribution of this text to the 6 major centers of the Khilafah as the now standard text. Now, what's interesting is that standard text, when you look at it, okay, so if we look kind of at this picture here, what you see here is that there's no tashkil, there's no marks for pronunciation. Okay, so what's amazing about this text in of itself that has no marks, it allows for the different qira'at, which are going to be the next subject, okay? And that is the pronunciation. So this is the harf, okay, or the wording of Quraysh, okay? All right. But there are still different accents that can be used. And the initial Quran of Uthman that was distributed and still in existence today. So this is a copy from, I think, Birmingham, the UK, which is preserved there. It shows that there aren't any markings for pronunciation because it allowed for that variance in pronunciation. So we come now to the qira'at. What are the qira'at? So the qira'at refers to recitation styles of the Quran. Okay, so we're dealing with the same words now, but we're dealing with a different way of reciting those words. Right. So the ulama of the Quran throughout history, they preserve different recitation styles, each with its own unique set of rules and principles. So tajweed rules, okay, and principles for reading. So if you're going to stop on this word, you're going to pronounce it this way, but if you're going to continue, it's pronounced a little bit differently, and so forth. These styles are known as the qira'at or the recitations, and they serve as a means of preserving the Quran's original pronunciation, its pacing, and its accent. And it also adds to the beauty of the Quranic recitation. So that is the qira'at. So how many are there? There are 7 original, okay, qira'at that fall under the mutawatir category. So mutawatir, remember, it means that the transmission is so extensive, so many people are narrating it, that it eliminates the possibility of any mistake, and there is consensus on it. So the Qur'an were selected or kind of canonized, as they say, okay, as official by the Quranic scholar Abu Bakr ibn Mujahid, who died in the year 324 after the Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. And in his book, Kitab As-Sab'a fil Qira'at, the book of the 7 recitations. Ibn al-Jazari later added 3 more reciters or recitation styles to make a total of 10 recitations. And so we have al-Qira'at al-Ashr, al-Kubra wa-Sughra. So we have, these 10 recitations. So the 7 original ones are the Qira'ah of Nafi' al-Madani. So Nafi' was one of the ulama of the Quran from Medina. And so his recitation is most commonly recited by Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, and the people who narrated from Nafi' were Qalun and Warsh. So those are the two recitation styles based on these two students, Qalun and Warsh. We have the Qira'ah of Ibn Kathir al-Makki, which was recited by the two scholars Qumbul and al-Bazzi, and people like Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. And this was the recitation that was prominent in Mecca and prominent in the Hajj and Umrah. So al-Bazzi and Qumbul are the two, their styles are the style of Ibn, are based on the recitation of Ibn Kathir. We have the Qira'ah of Abu Amr al-Basri. Okay, so now we turn to Iraq, and that's Ad-Duri and As-Susi transmitted from him. And then we have the Qira'ah of Ibn Amr al-Shami from the Greater Syria, and it was recited and preserved by Ibn Bakwan and Hisham. We have the Qira'ah of Asim al-Kufi back to Iraq, which was recited by Imam Abu Hanifa, and also one of the recitation styles of Imam Ahmad. And the people that narrated from him, okay, from Asim and Kufi, is Hafs and Shu'bah. So Hafs is the prominent one that probably the majority of you recite. And so this is also one of the Kufi recitations or the Iraqi recitations. And we have another recitation style from Al-Kufa in Iraq, and that's from Hamza al-Kufi, which was preserved by his students Khalad and Khalaf. So Khalaf also has his own qira'ah, which is known as qira'at Khalaf al-Bazzar. Okay, and then we have finally the recitation of Al-Kisa'i, also preserved by Al-Layth and Ad-Duri. So Ad-Duri, he preserved both the recitation of Abu Amr and Al-Kasa'i. Okay, and so we see that Iraq is well represented here. There's quite a bit of the recitation styles that they spread into Iraq. So the recitation style again is going to be different pronunciation of the words. So the words themselves do not change for the most part, and the word itself can be pronounced differently, which can expand upon the meaning but doesn't change the meaning. So, as I think we already went over this. So we have the qira'ah, for example, the difference between Asim, okay, Hafs and Asim, which is the typical narration style, Maliki Yawmiddin, and the qira'ah, for example, of Nafi'. So Qalun and Warsh, they're both recited Maliki Yawmiddin. Okay, so Malik Yawmiddin is going to be the king of the Day of Judgment, and the way that Hafs pronounces it or says it is Malik Yawmiddin, and that is the owner of the Day of Judgment. And so, is there a difference between ownership and kingship? No, they both indicate the same thing, that Allah's sovereignty over that day, but they both give different kind of angles to Allah's ownership of that day. And so this is, of course, for those of you that enjoy the recitation of the Quran, this provides an enjoyment of the Quran, which is very unique in that we can enjoy the different pronunciation. And so I personally love the Qira'at very, very much. And one of my teachers is one of the great shuyukh of Qira'at in this era, in this time. He has an isnad which goes back to the Prophet, of course, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is very short. And so his short for today, this era, which would be 28 people. So 28 people between him and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all of these recitations, okay, as you'll see here, they all go back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is isnad for each of them, a chain of narrations that goes back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from the Prophet it goes to Jibreel and to Allah. Okay, so this chain of narration, it doesn't end with the Prophet ﷺ, it goes all the way back to Allah Azza wa Jal. So, and among them, the strongest chains that are in existence in these narrations is Nafi' al-Madani and Asim al-Kufi. And so they would be the recitations of Hafs, okay, which is 95% of the Muslim world today uses the Mus'haf of Hafs, okay, or the pronunciation of Hafs. But also there is Shu'ba, and Shu'ba is very easy to learn, by the way. The difference between Shu'ba and Hafs are very limited, subhanAllah. Maybe only 500 words are pronounced differently, words. And they're repeated. For example, so um, I was going to give you an example. As an example, we have the buyut, for example, Allah's statement in multiple ayat in the Quran, buyut, okay, which is um, often pronounced in Shu'ba as biyut. Okay, so instead of buyut, biyut. Okay, and the meaning is the same. Okay, but you'll find it in every instance. Okay, of this word that Shu'ba pronounces it biyut and Hafs pronounces it buyut. Mayyit is another word that's pronounced differently, and so it's a very minor change, subhanallah, but it is a recitation in of itself, and something beautiful. So if you have an opportunity to learn or to get an opportunity to recite to a scholar in Shu'ba, it's worth it because it's very simple. And the Sheikh, mashallah, he taught his wife. He gave her ijaza or transmission permission in Shaba very easily because basically you're only changing a small number of words in the. Whereas if you look at Warsh is very complicated, very different. It's a very different narration altogether, and so quite different in the pronunciation. So if you look at, if we were to consider a surah that most of you probably know, just to give you an idea, with Warsh, it's considered like one of the surahs in Juz'ama, for example, Surah Al-A'la, okay? Uh, so Surah Al-A'la is um, most of you, I think, are familiar with it or probably memorized it. Okay. بسم الله الرحمن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. And so we would recite in with Hafs, it would be سبح اسم ربك الأعلى سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. But Warsh will remove some of these hamzat, okay, that on the alif, and so he'll be سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى. And so there is this imala that on the last word that is a bit unique that you will not find in Hafs and so forth. And then some of the others like Hamza, Khalaf and Hamza, for example, they do imala, which is like they kind of stretch they kind of accent the word in a certain way, which is very common, like in the Sham region, like Palestine and Lebanon and Syria and these locations. And so you'll find that طه instead of طه, okay, طه. So again, it's just accenting. It's just like when you see like how people from Syria, they speak different to people from Egypt, for example, or people from Saudi Arabia speak different from both locations. So these types of kind of accentuation, almost like again how the English sounds in America compared to the English with the in British pronunciation, the varieties of the British pronunciation. So there are these differences, and so one can see. So you wonder, okay, how come there's so many different pronunciations in Iraq? Okay, because we saw that going back that the majority of these you have Mecca and Medina, okay, and Asham, and basically the rest are essentially are all Iraqi, recitations for the most part. So why Iraq has so much? And you consider like how England has multiple different pronunciations, and so um, England has a variety or different ways of different accents, right, that exist today. So that gives a little bit of an idea. So that is the ahruf and the qira'at. Do you guys have any questions on that? Amir, did you say something? I didn't hear. I will assume that everybody's okay then. Now we'll go to Hadith, and today's Hadith is, as usual, it is going to be quite complex as before. So we have a lot of terminology in today's Hadith class. So pay close attention, inshallah. So because the hadith is complicated for today, what I will do is we'll just jump right into it, and then we'll take a break in the middle of it because it is complex. Bismillah. So today we're going to talk about in the jarh wa ta'dil. Okay, this is an important subject. Okay, jarh wa ta'dil. Okay, so these words are very, very important to understand. Jarh, it means criticism of the narrator, and ta'dil means validation or praise of the narrator. So jarh or ta'dil is the science that tests the narrators of isnad in terms of adala and dabt. Okay, so we are essentially where the scholars of hadith, they are testing or evaluating, okay, the narrator in terms of their piety and their precision. So this is the one. So the what is the name of the book in which these these findings are can be very good. So yeah, Ilm al-Rijal. Okay, so Ilm al-Rijal. So in Ilm al-Rijal, this is where you will find this science being discussed. Ilm al-Rijal. Very good. Good. So what is the basis for this? And so the basis for jarh, okay, is Allah's statement in Surah Al-Hujarat where He says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu." Okay, O you who believe, if an evil person comes to you with news, then validate it. Okay, so the concept of making sure that we validate people, okay, um, is found in Surah Al-Hujurat, and also the ta'adil where we're praising the people. Okay, all right, and so this word actually validation is in both of them actually, and so so jarh is where we're criticizing the narrator, and so here a kind of a corrupt person, coming with news, we have to check them. And also in Surah Surah Al-Bara'a, in ayah number 100, Allah's statement, وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُم بِإِحْسَانٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. So here Allah Azza wa Jalla, He's praising a certain group of people. وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ, the foremost, okay, among the early Muslims, min al-muhajirin, from those who immigrated to Medina, wal ansar, and the Ansar who supported them in Medina, والذين تبعوهم بإحسان, and those who followed them in righteousness. رضي الله عنهم, Allah is pleased with them, ورضوا عنه, and they are pleased with Him. So here we see the status of certain people, okay, and that Allah is pleased with them. So this gives us a basis for this entire science. Okay. So classification schemes of Jarh and Ta'deel. Okay, there are a variety of different ones, as would be expected. There is not just one system. The first one to come up with a system like this was Imam Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi. All right. So what were the levels that he proposed? He proposed several levels. The first level, okay, was the Sahaba. The Sahaba themselves, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they need no test, and they are all just and accurate. What's his basis for that? What's his basis for saying all the Sahaba are just and accurate, and they don't require any evaluation? There's no reason to go into their lives and look at their their knowledge or their precision or their piety. Why? How can he say that? How can he say that we don't need to make jarh and ta'deel upon the Sahaba? What's the evidence for that? I'll give you a hint. We just went over it. All right, so the evidence for that is what we just reviewed, which is here in Surah Al-Tawbah, Surah Al-Bara'a, ayah number 100. Okay, here Allah said that He's pleased with them. Okay, Allah has said in general about the Sahaba that Allah testified about them, right? He testified that He is pleased with them. So will Allah be pleased with somebody who is not just? Someone who is not pious, someone who is not accurate in transmitting the religion? Absolutely not, right? And so as a result, we know the Sahaba, and because of the fact that they interacted with the Prophet ﷺ, and they were well aware of the punishment for lying, intentionally about him or spreading something that was not true. They knew the Prophet ﷺ's prohibition against that, specifically his statement that whoever lies about him, said something about the Prophet ﷺ did not say, let him take his seat in the hellfire. Let him go ahead and reserve his seat in the hellfire. So they wouldn't do that. So they were very careful about transmitting from the Prophet ﷺ, and if they were not sure, they did not. Okay, and so for that reason, it makes it's valid. It's a valid argument that there is no requirement for them. And in any case, we have a lot of information about them to begin with. Their biographies are very well known, and we see certain people like Abu Bakr that spent a lot of time with the Prophet ﷺ, and though he didn't narrate a lot of hadith, okay, as an example, part of it could be because of his concerns about accuracy. Okay, so he was afraid to not be accurate, and others that had more, like Aisha and Anas, that spent a lot of time with the Prophet ﷺ, and they have a large number of narrations, but they also were also very young when they were on the Prophet ﷺ, so they had that opportunity to memorize. Now, the second level would be, so that's level one is the Sahaba. So they have their own kind of special rules. And level two is, Maktab Adala, which is basically everybody else, okay? From the Tabi'een, from the students of the companions, all the way on forward beyond that, okay? And so from them, we will look at them potentially being among 4 different categories of ta'adil, okay? So remember, not jarh here, only ta'adil, praise, okay? So from strongest to weakest, all right, we have the following categories. The strongest categorization is going to be where they are considered thiqah. We've mentioned this word many times before, that they are trustworthy. Okay. Another word is hafiz. Okay. So when you hear hafiz al-dhahabi, for example, this word, it means a memorizer of hadith specifically. We're talking about here. This word is not used in the science of hadith. It's not mentioned. It's not being used as a memorizer of Quran. We're talking about memorizers of hadith. Okay, so they memorize the hadith with precision. So they are very precise. Thabt is another word. Okay, that indicates reliability. So that's the highest class. Somebody who is in that class, these are the people of Bukhari and Muslim, and basically the narrators of the authentic hadith. The next level, it's close to that, but not quite so high, is saduq. Okay, or someone is an honest person, but he doesn't have that reliability. Okay, as the people of thiqah. A little bit less than that would be sheikh. Okay, who is an authority, but his precision and his piety are less than the top 2 classes. And then last category, still acceptable, all right, but just not as reliable as the others, would be salih al-hadith, okay? So that his hadith are valid and acceptable, righteous, okay? But adala and dhabt, okay, so piety and precision are a little bit less. So these are the levels of ta'dil that Imam al-Ghazi and others used. Now we come to the level of jarh. Okay, now we're going to talk about the weakness of certain narrators. And so we're going to look at the least weak to the worst. Okay, so as if we're continuing down that hierarchy from ta'dil. So the closest thing to Salih al-Hadith. Okay, so we go up here. So right down here, Salih al-Hadith. All right. The closest thing that's going to be to that, all right, is Layyin al-Hadith. Yuktab i'tibaran. Okay. So Layyin al-Hadith, it means that he is lenient in the Hadith. All right. He is not so precise, makes mistakes. But this person are written and they can be considered. Can they be considered on their own? No, generally not. Okay, so if the narration is only found, the transmission or the chain is only with this person, it may be rejected. Okay, but if there is supporting evidence, it can be raised, okay, up to the level of Hasan or Sahih, لغيره, okay, because of supporting evidence. But it's not, this person is not an authority in of himself. A little bit weaker than that, ليس بالقوي. So what you're saying here is this person is not strong. Okay, this person is not strong. Again, these hadith yuktab i'tibaran, that they are written and they are considered, though they are not an authority in of themselves, they can be, the hadith can reach the degree of Hasan or Sahih with supporting evidence, but by itself, no. Third would be a person who is considered weak in hadith, ضعيف in hadith. And so this person is not going to be written down, okay? But it might be considered when if there's very significant supporting evidence. But these people are generally their chains are not memorized. And lastly is matruk al-hadith. This is the weakest form, the highest level of jarh. okay, it's going to be the matruk category. And that person is basically, we're saying this person is unreliable. Their hadith are not written down and they're not even considered. Right? So that is the hierarchy. Now, another way of looking at it, as I told you, all of these are similar wordings. And then the last one, as I mentioned, is like Sheikh or Salih al Hadith. So Saduq, say al Hifz, that he is, honest, but has poor memory. Lahu awham, he has mistakes. يخطئ, he's not precise, uh, and so forth. So these are some of the different statements that can be made, but the person is still considered trustworthy. Now, going again back to jarh, okay, criticism. We have al-mastur, al-majhul, al-hal. So more than one person has narrated from such a person, and he is not endorsed. Not endorsed. Okay, so that is the strongest of the levels of jarh. I mean, the person is considered strong. Okay, in terms of criticism, we have also daif, weak, but there's no details. If only one person has ever narrated from him, then he might be considered a majhul or unknown. He's never endorsed, and the reason of weakness is given, which would be matruk or saqit. Okay, he's dropping names from the isnad and so forth. Then we have the accused of lying, muttaham al-kadhib, or al-kadhab, which is the liar. So these are another way of looking at it. So as I told you, multiple systems there. So let's look now at the Jarh and Ta'dil of Imam al-Dhahabi. So al-Dhahabi is very important because he's one of the people that created the first books of Ilm al-Rijal. So does anybody know the name of his collection? It's a very, very, very famous collection, okay, of Jarh and Ta'dil, or of Ilm al-Rijal. That you will come across it if you go further in your studies, and that is Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, which is basically the biographies of the noble people. Okay, you can translate it maybe that way. Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. Including them just for our knowledge of them. So Dhahabi was born in Damascus in the year 673 of the Hijrah. So we'd say he's a middle-aged scholar or medieval, different classification system, and his level of organization was different. So he looked at it as, in his ta'dil system, thiqa, hujja, thiqa, hafiz, and thiqa, mutqan. Okay, so that's the strongest category. And so again, very similar, right? So we have this word, hafiz and thiqa. We looked at it before in the system of Razi. So he has the second category is the same. Thiqa saduq, okay. Saduq is trustworthy. So he is okay, and there's no problem with him. But he doesn't have full mastery in the same way the people are the Hafid and Mutqan and first category they have. And then he essentially combines the last two categories of Al-Razi into one. So he combines the category of Sheikh and Salih al-Hadith into one category. And that's محله الصدوق جيد الحديث صالح الحديث شيخ الحديث. So he's essentially combining the 3 and 4 of Al-Razi in his ta'dil. His levels of jarh, worst to least bad, okay? The worst is Dajjal or Kadhab, okay? So that again, Kadhab is the worst category in all forms of jarh. This is a known liar or a known fabricator. Muttaham bil kadhib, accused of lying, so no difference from before. But you see here, he doesn't, instead of having 6 levels, he only has 5. So he has matruk laysa bi thiqa, his hadith is rejected. And then we have ضعيف جدا أو منكر الحديث. So the very weak or the one who has like problematic in hadith, and the closest to ta'dil is laysa biqawi. So he actually leaves out which one? Who can remember which one is left out? Which classification of Razi did he leave out or did he not include? So Razi had 6 categories, and here he only has 5. So he left out layyin al-hadith, lenient in the hadith, layyin al-hadith. And so I take you back, to see that. This one. So you see here that there how many categories here that they have. All right. So when we look at this categorization of Al-Razi, Razi, he has matruk al-hadith. It's combining the kadhab and muttaham bil-kadhib, okay? That he's combining liars and those accused of lying together, okay? So you see here, these 2 categories were matruk, okay? They were combined in with this rejected hadith categorization. So again, different ways of looking at it, and different ways you should be familiar with, and that there is not just one way. So now we're going to talk very, very briefly about transmission. Any questions so far? It's pretty straightforward, right? Nothing. I think we've already kind of talked about a lot of these concepts in the last few lectures, and so hopefully now it's all very, it's the terminology is not abnormal to you. It's something you've heard several times. Alhamdulillah. Good. Okay, so now we look at at-tahammul and al-ada. Okay, so reception and delivery of the hadith itself. So there are 8 different ways of transmitting, okay? And some of these are very rare. They're not quite common at all, and whereas others are very common. So the way that most hadith is transmitted, okay, is going to be the first 2, direct hearing and rehearsal. But permission, presentation, correspondence, they're going to be found. Declaration, bequest, and finding a lot rarer, as you will see. So what is direct hearing? As-sama', okay? This is when the teacher speaks and the students listen. So this could be from a book or from the memory of the sheikh, all right? And so this is a sheikh transmitting to his students hadith, all right? And so what they would say in the chain of narration, in the isnad, they would say, سَمَعْتُ كذا وكذا. So, for example, if my teacher is, his name is Walid, okay, I would say, سَمِعْتُ مِنْ Walid, okay, or I heard from Walid, or حدثني Walid, as an example, or it could be plural, okay, سمعنا, we heard, or حدثنا, we were informed. But these words indicate direct hearing, that I met this person and I heard him, and so I'm transmitting directly from him. All right. So this wording, when we see this wording in the chain of narration, it is the indication of hearing directly from that person. Okay. Then there is al-qira'ah, which is recitation or rehearsal. This is when the student reads and the teacher listens. Okay. And so this is reciting to the sheikh. And so in this case, أخبرنا أنبأنا حدثنا. Okay. حدثنا is what we said here, though, right? So here, حدثني or حدثنا, okay, that we were told. Okay, so how can it be the same here? It is only different because we add this. So حدثنا أو أخبرنا قراءة عليه. It has to be this addition here. قراءة عليه. So if you see that, then you understand that this is a person who recited to his teacher. Okay, so typically, which is the most common one? Recitation or direct hearing? So when you look at Sahih Bukhari, for example, or Muwatta ibn Malik, any of these, the major books of hadith, what was the transmission style? Typical. Is it recitation? Is it the student reading to the sheikh, or direct hearing? So here you think direct? What do you guys agree with that or disagree? It is direct. Okay, it is direct, and so that's why when you look into the hadith, you will see typically these words being used. حدثنا أو أنبأنا أخبرنا. All of these different words that are typically being used there, and so they indicate direct. And so what would happen as you when you read, you see that Imam Malik would sit with the hadith, with the book of hadith, and he would read to the students, okay, as an example. And so they would hear and they would write down. They would write down as he was saying. They would take notes. So these are the two most common ones, okay, and that you will see today. A third one, which is also very common still in hadith and many other sciences, is ijaza, permission. Okay, so this is when the sheikh gives permission to a student to read some or all of his work. Okay, and so it would be akhbarana ijaza. He informed us by means of permission. And so ijaza is a very important science, which still, or an important kind of method of transmission, which still exists today. And so when you go and you read, for example, to a sheikh the Quran, okay. As an example, I mentioned to you my teacher who has a short isnad going back to the Prophet and then to Jibreel and to Allah and so on. That so when I read to the sheikh, okay, and in the case of the Quran, I'm going to be reading to him. If I have read the Quran well to him and I have mastered it, then he might give me ijaza. Okay, he gives me permission to pass this along. So now it's almost a certification in ways. So this is a very, very common way of certifying. So before, so in the modern days, we have these courses like this one where they study and then they take exams and they get a certificate that I have passed. Okay, a class. But it used to be that the student would sit with the teacher and read a book to him, for example, and get this certification through ijaza. So this is a very frequent thing, and I hope that inshallah all of you will have the opportunity to get that in the future, bi'idhnillah, so that you can build your collection of ijaza. Then those are the three common ones. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into less common ones. And this is munawala, which is when a sheikh hands over his narrations to the student. This could be with or without his permission. And so, nawalni fulan, or haddathana munawala. Okay, that these are the ways that it will be found. And again, this is less common, and so you would have to read a lot of hadith to find this one being mentioned, as well as this one. This is correspondence, al-kitaba, and this is to write to the student. So writing with permission to transmit and writing without including the permission to transmit. So كتب إلي فلان حدثني فلان كتابة, declaration, which is to inform about the hearing of a hadith. Okay, and so this can be again with or without the permission or ijaza. So أعلمني شيخي بكذا. Okay, أعلمني is he declared it to me. So it will not be as strong as sama. Okay, direct hearing. The bequest would be leaving instructions upon departure for traveling or death to transmit a book or narrations on his behalf. Al-wasiyya bil-kitaba. So this is exceedingly rare. And lastly, al-wijada, to find a report from a sheikh without hearing it directly from him. Okay, and so these are pretty rare types of categories. So, but that's the hadith for today. What do you guys? Any questions on that? Pretty clear, or something you want to look into deeper? Jazakallah khair, Zahira. Hannah and Yusuf, Amira, B. Any questions? So, very direct, yeah. So this is it's building, right? So you guys, as you see, you're building a lot of knowledge from the previous classes, and so now it becomes very clear. But before, when we were just discussing this, it was a lot of terminology for you, but now it's starting to make a little bit more sense. It's essentially like world building, right? So we're building a new world with all these different terms, and you're starting to learn it. So I'll give you guys a 5 minute break, and we'll come back to Usul. Usul is going to be a beast today, so that I will tell you. Usul al-Fiqh today is very complicated. A large amount of new terminology you will hear, and very complex, but very interesting, inshallah. So I don't want to scare you about it. It's just going to require a lot of focus, and so take a nice 5 minutes and. Um, so for today, we're going to look at. So we're going to go to the methodology of the extraction, okay? And so we started this last week, basically, where we looked at linguistic principles for how to extract evidence from the sources. So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So, what are the agreed upon sources of evidence? Who can remind me? So, what do all the scholars agree is evidence when it comes to fiqh, when it comes to law, or creating a law? Okay, so Quran and Hadith is the first two. Very good, excellent, Yusuf. Good to hear. And then there's two more. So what if the principle is not found directly in Quran and Hadith? Very good, ijma'. So we have consensus. Okay, so consensus, ijma'. So the agreement of all the scholars on a specific issue is considered. It rises to the level of Quran and Hadith in terms of evidence. And lastly is qiyas, or the so the use of who can explain to me qiyas? Tell me what qiyas is. Who remembers? Anybody? So this is the process of analogy, okay, analogies. And so when you say, okay, well, because this is a principle in Islam and these two concepts are similar to one another, so this must be the ruling related to this secondary issue, okay? So if we have a new case, okay, that shares the same essential reason as an established case, then we can use the original ruling, okay, for the new case. Make sense? So ijma is consensus, okay, scholarly consensus, and qiyas is analogy. Okay, so make sure you remember that. That's a very, very important. So those are the agreed upon, sources of evidence. Okay, so we said that there are some types of evidence which are not agreed upon. Okay, by everybody. So, for example, in the Maliki school of thought, the Amal Ahlul Medina is considered like an evidence the actions of the people of Medina in the time of Imam Malik, because he was still living in an era where there were still tabi'een and atba' tabi'een, second and third generation. And so these people, if they were doing something routinely, okay, the people of Medina were doing something routinely, then they must have gotten it from, the earlier generation, from the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. And so he used that, but that's not considered as an example, something which is agreed upon. So the other schools of thought, for example, don't accept that. But as I said, so there are a variety of different things that are not agreed upon, but the things that are agreed upon: Quran, number one; Hadith, number two; Ijma, consensus, number three; Qiyas, analogy, number four. So now what we're trying to do is we're trying to extract principles from these, okay, from these, typically when we're talking about these linguistic principles, we're talking about Quran and Hadith primarily, okay? We're not talking about Ijma and Qiyas as much. So we're talking about how am I going to extract principles, okay, from the Quran and Hadith through the use of language, okay? That's where we're at. So tafsir and-nusus, okay, is our first concept today. So the Quran and the Sunnah, or the Quran and Hadith, are considered nusus. Okay, so you will hear this word frequently in the sciences of usul al-fiqh, or in fiqh. They were talking about nusus, which are they are the evidences, they are the texts. Okay, so the word nusus is the plural of nas, and nas, it means text. Okay, so they say, what is the nas? What is the text that we're talking about? And this is a reference to something from the Quran, an ayah from the Quran, or a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, nusus being plural. So they are the source texts for evidence, okay, the dalil. So scholars differ in the methods of how to derive conclusions from the text. And this field is called tafsir and-nusus. So we will learn how to derive laws from the text directly. We will lay out the tools used by the scholars of usul al-fiqh to gain the meaning of a passage and the implication of the meaning of that passage. And then we will learn how to derive laws that are not explicitly stated by the passage. So these tools can also be used to ponder the meaning of the Quran. Not just to get the meaning, but also what are the ramifications, what are the consequences of this understanding, okay, from text to fiqh conclusion. So that's kind of what we're looking at today, and just giving you an overview. All right. So the first thing we're going to try to understand is the clear and the unclear text. So when I'm saying about text, what is the word, the technical word that I'm looking at? A text. What is it that we just went over? See who's following me? Very good. So nusus. So nas, it would be the singular, and nusus would be the plural. Okay. So I'm looking now at the clear and the unclear text. Okay, or the nusus. So when it comes to reviewing the Quran and the Hadith, all right, we find that there is sometimes the terms that are being used or what's being described is very clear, and sometimes it's not very clear. Okay, the clear text is the one which we are obligated to follow. Okay, there could be the possibility of ta'wil. No, ta'wil is not a new word for you guys. So who remembers what ta'wil means? We didn't spend a lot of time on it, but we did discuss it before. Very good, excellent. Yes. So it is interpretation. Okay, so that is the idea of like trying to when we see a part of the Quran, we're trying to understand it better, and so sometimes it requires an interpretation. Okay, and it requires further, clarification to understand its meaning perfectly. So that can sometimes happen with the clear text, as we will find. So this is just kind of the introduction. So we're going to go into a lot more detail on these issues, but generally, the clear text. Some of the clearest texts in the Quran, as we'll see, the muhkam ayat and muhkam evidences, that they don't require any ta'wil at all. Unclear text is one that you do not apply until you determine the clarity of the text. Okay, so it requires ijtihad to determine the meaning. So ijtihad is a word that we haven't spoken a lot about, and so I'm going to take a moment here just to kind of define that for you guys, because you will see it multiple times in this lesson. Does anybody know what ijtihad means before I go into it? We have discussed it before, but it's been a while. So ijtihad, it has the similarity to the word jihad, right? So it is basically the scholar struggling or striving, okay, to determine the understanding of or to determine a ruling, okay? It is the individual struggle or striving of a scholar to elucidate the ruling from a text. Okay? So this is where a scholar is trying to use all of their faculties, all of their kind of intelligence to be able to, come to a conclusion about something which generally it's not explicit. Is that clear? Everybody else clear? Good. So my question then would be, would you expect ijtihad to be done when there is a clear text? Okay, so we're saying no. So the answer is no. Okay, the answer is no. Is that because if it's clear, you might do ta'wil. Okay, where there is some kind of interpretations, but it doesn't really truly require ijtihad because it's clear. Okay, the ruling is clear, and so the halal and the haram in this case are very clear, and there isn't. So it's only with the unclear text that really ijtihad is going to be necessary. And that's something I wanted you guys to be aware of. Everybody okay? I see Yusuf and Zahir are answering, but everyone else is quiet. Just want to make sure everybody else is on board. So ta'wil, Zahira, thank you for your question. So ta'wil, okay, is interpretation, okay, of a text. And so as an example, when we consider some of the Quran, okay, so ta'wil has a lot of times we can consider it somewhat almost like tafsir of the Quran, okay, but so this is where there is more than one meaning is found in the ayah. right? More than one meaning is found in the ayah. So the question then becomes, which meaning is relevant to the ruling that we're looking at, okay? And so it might, so the ayah is not perfectly clear, okay? Um, and so as an example, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ, okay? They ask you about the phases of the moon. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ, okay? And so they are places for people. So the ayat, let me pull it up just so that we're all together on that. One second, I'll pull up that ayah. It's in Surah Al-Baqarah. And it's 189 or something. All right, so they ask you about the phases of the moon. Say they are a means for people to determine time and pilgrimage. And so this is the translation of that ayah. So it's ayah 189 from Surah Al-Baqarah. They ask you about the phases of the moon. Say they are a means for people to determine time and pilgrimage. So is this ayah perfectly clear, or does it require a little bit of tafsir? Exactly, right? And so but so is this tafsir something which is known? It's already like established, either by a hadith or by the statement of a companion, or is it something that I have to try to figure out on my own? Very good. It's already known. So it's not something that I have to do on my own because it's already known, it's already been looked at. And so I don't have, all I have to do is I have to learn it, I have to go back and I have to study it. Not I have to try to figure it out because there is no way to figure it, there is no information on it. So that kind of helps us understand. I hope that that makes it a little bit clear. Alhamdulillah. Everybody else doing okay? Amira, Hannah, B, Iram, are you guys doing okay? I know it's in Ramadan, so everybody might be too. I hope that people didn't fall asleep. Okay, well, I'll keep going. Hopefully, everybody else is doing okay. So now we're going to look. So now, when we look at clear words or phrases, and thank you, B, for answering. When we look at clear words, okay, so we can subdivide them into four categories. Okay, there's al-muhkam, al-mufassal, al-nas, and al-zahir. Okay, so the highest or most clear type of speech is al-muhkam, and this is why Allah Azza wa Jal, He told us in Surah Al Imran about the ayat of the Quran, muhkamat and mutashabihat. Okay, so the muhkam is something which is perfectly clear. There is no doubt about it whatsoever, and it is completely clear. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who revealed to you the book from it, there are ayat that are muhkamat, that are very clear. هن أم الكتاب. And these ayat are the basis of the Quran. وأخر متشابهات, and others which are not clear. Okay? And so this is the one way we can see the word muhkam in the Quran itself. So the muhkam, it generally means it has one meaning. Okay? There is no possibility of it being abrogated. We haven't talked about abrogation. That inshallah will be, inshallah, next week. We'll look at an-nasikh wal-mansukh in the Quran. But it is, the meaning is, so the concept is preserved in Islamic Sharia, meaning that the ruling has not been erased or removed from Islam. And there is no, is there a necessity to do ta'wil? Do you guys think on the muhkam? Does the person have to do ta'wil? Very good, Zahira. So now you understand it. Excellent. Okay. So there is no ta'wil because there is one meaning. If there was more than one meaning, then you would have to do ta'wil. Okay, you have to say, okay, which meaning are we going to refer to here? Okay. So, but the muhkam, there is only one meaning. It is very clear. Okay. It is the clearest of all phrases or words in the Quran. This next category is al-mufassal, which means it is explained. Okay. So it's not entirely clear on its own, but there is explanation provided in the ayah, for example, itself, or in the context of the passage of the Quran, or there's a hadith that explains it. There is the nas, which is explicit but less clear than the mufassal, and there is al-zahir, which has an apparent meaning, though it is not clear which one it is, and so this one is very open to ta'wil. And we're going to look at each of these in more detail. Now, when it comes to unclear words, there's also a subdivision of that. So the uncleared words, we can look at it this way. If the word is clear, but there is ambiguity, if it applies to certain subsets, then it is considered al-khafi. Okay? Al-khafi. Is the word unclear, but its meaning can be determined by human reasoning or ijtihad, then the text is mushkil. If the word is unclear and the meaning has been given by Allah elsewhere or by the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, then the text is mujmal. If the word is unclear and the meaning is not given by Allah, either in an ayah or in a hadith, then the text becomes mutashabih, which is the other category that I mentioned to you in this ayah from Ali Imran. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. Okay, so the mutashabih is that which there is only Allah knows. Okay, and an example of the mutashabih in the Quran would be what? What is something in the Quran? Very good, Zahir. Alif Lam Mim. This is something which is not known. We don't know what this means. Okay, only Allah knows, and so it's not even worthy of taking guesses at it because Allah did not give us any way to know it. Okay, so it is there in a sense like it is a test because the people who want to kind of make up their own religion, they go after these ayat because then they can try to play with them. Okay. But so the believer accepts everything which is muhkam, clear in the Quran, and that which is unclear, mutashabih, we believe it is all from Allah. So, but the people who want to create, fitna, they want to create divisions, or they want to distort the religion, they focus their attention on the mutashabih. Okay, so that's all right. So again, a lot of terminology here. So we have clear words, muhkam, mufassal, nas, and zahir. And we have unclear words, al-khafi, al-mushkil, al-mujmal, and al-mutashabih. So now let's go a little bit into more detail on the unclear. So al-khafi, all right, its definition, it means hidden, okay, or obscure. It is the case where we don't have problems understanding the word, but there is vagueness when we try to apply it to something that may or may not fall under it. That is the definition. If someone has taken something that does not belong to them, okay, but it is less than what the text implies, or in a case such as a home invasion, where there is more harm implied and the act is more intense than simply a theft. Okay. The question here is this categorized as theft? Okay. So when we look at the definition in the Arabic language for stealing, okay, for theft, what is the Islamic definition? The Islamic definition is someone who takes something of value that belongs to somebody else and is protected in its proper place, and he takes it in a secretive manner. All right. So the example here is if you leave your phone on a table, and somebody walks by and takes the phone and puts it in their pocket, is this equivalent to the definition that we just talked about? So again, definition of theft in Islam: someone who takes something of value, number one, has to be of value. Number two, belongs to somebody else. Number three, it is protected in its proper place. And number four, the person takes it in a secretive manner. Does the concept of, okay, very good, Yusuf. Okay. So you guys are finding the defects in this issue. Okay. Number one, it wasn't protected. It wasn't. So what does it mean? Protected in its proper place. What does that mean? A safe or in a bag. Very good. So if it's in your purse, okay. If it's in your purse, then that's your your place, okay, that you've or it's a safe in the home, okay, kept it in a safe, or it's inside the desk, okay. So I can be hiding it inside the desk. The concept here is that it has to be in some kind of protected place. If it's out in the open, it's not considered protected. And you're so very good. The second concept here is that there has to be also it has to be hidden. Very good. Now that's one problem. Okay, so the man swiping the phone from off of the table. One issue is that it's not protected. What else is what other failure in the definition do we have? So is the phone something of value? Very good, Zahira. It's secretive, okay? He didn't do it in a secretive manner, meaning he didn't try to distract you. He didn't say, "Oh, look, did you see the sun? It's really pretty today." And then while you were looking out the window, he took your phone, okay? He didn't do anything like that. The phone was the person left their phone on the table and they walked away, and somebody walked by and they took the phone, okay? So there is no secretive. So generally, secretive manner means sneaking around, uh, you know, um, um, trying to not be seen, trying not to be detected, that type of thing. Okay. So these are the four categories, okay, that apply to theft. Okay. So the question then becomes, okay, what if the person came into your house, okay, and they stole an egg or they stole a chocolate bar? Okay. Um, would this be considered theft? So the chocolate bar is very good. It's not something valuable. Okay. And so that's the problem here that we have that causes it to make it khafi. All right. Is that the question here is that it's not meeting all of the categories. All right. It's not meeting all of the categories. And so it has this kind of obscurity to it. All right. Um, so when we look at the person who steals the phone that's out in the open, will he be considered a thief, even though all four categories are not met? Yes. Okay, because he knows that's not his phone. He knows that belongs to somebody else. It is something valuable to that person. Okay, and just because that person was careless, it doesn't mean that he's able to take it. So it's still a thief. Okay, and it's still considered sadiqa. Okay, even though it did not meet all four categories. And so this is where you start to see now why there's a fat here, or why this is khafi. Because if I told you right now, if I said, a man, he entered um, a house at night when its inhabitants were sleeping, and he went into the office and he took down a picture from the wall, and he opened the safe that was hidden behind that picture, and um, he took a gold, I'm sorry, a diamond necklace, gold and diamond necklace out of the safe, and he escaped the home. Does this person, is this khafi, or is it muhkam? Is it clear or unclear? It's very clear. It's muhkam. Okay. There's no difficulty in and providing a ruling on this case. This is a person who hit all four categories. Okay. So, number one, he took something of value. Number two, it belongs to somebody else. Number three, it's protected in its proper place. And number four, he did it in a secretive manner. He made a great deal of effort. Okay. So the question then, okay, why would the person stealing the phone, why would it be khafi? It's because the two of them are not present. Okay, number one, he it wasn't protected, and number two, he didn't do it in secretive. So can there be a defense for this person? So if you're the defense attorney for this person, okay, he's been accused of stealing, and now he's in the court, and you're the Islamic lawyer, okay, the Sharia lawyer who is defending this person. What defense could be used that would get this person off the hook? How can this person be cleared? Or is it not possible for him to be cleared? He thought Allah gave it to him. Okay. So, all right, let's work with that, Zahira, for a second. Okay. He says, I thought Allah gave it to me. All right. Now, in which case would this defense work? It can be a valid argument or it can be an invalid argument, depending on the person. What kind of person could this be valid for? No problem, Hannah. Welcome back. The owner of the phone is careless, but he's not the one who is being tried here. The person who took the phone is the one who is being tried. So in what case would it be, if the thief in this case, he says, I thought Allah gave it to me, that's why I took it. Okay. In what case would that be a valid defense? So the fact that it's not proper, this is the khafi concept, okay? That now we know that it's unclear. Now we're trying to clarify it, okay? Now this is the job of the scholar, is to try to clarify it. So in what case would it be valid for someone to say, I thought Allah gave it to me? That's why I took it. Would you think this is um, even if he didn't know it belonged to somebody, okay? Um, but generally speaking, when we see a phone, we assume that it's something valuable, right? And so, assuming that it's something valuable, we would assume that it belongs to somebody as well. We don't see phones normally laying around, right? It's not something common. So generally, if you see a phone, you say, "Oh, this must belong to somebody." So a normal sane and reasonable person if they saw a phone like this, what would they do? So I'm assuming that I'm not assuming, I know for a fact, all of you, alhamdulillah, are sane, reasonable, intelligent people. Okay. If you see a phone laying on a table, okay, what would you do? You might take it and say, hey, somebody forgot their phone here, right? So you might try to find the owner that way. You might take the phone and take it to the lost and found. All right. You might see a group of people nearby and say, hey, did any of you forget your phone? Your phone is on the table. You better take it before someone else takes it. This is what a normal person would do, right? Now, what kind of person wouldn't do that? Okay, other than the thief. Is there an innocent type of person that might take the phone and put it in their pocket and walk away? Very good, Yusuf. It's not, I wouldn't say so. Islamically, the insane person, the person who doesn't have an intellect, okay? So the person who doesn't have reasoning or capability to reason, okay? So, for example, if a child did that, okay? If a 5-year-old child took the phone and put it in their pocket and left, would we say the child is the thief? Or would we say the child doesn't understand? Very good. He doesn't understand. We will not assume that he is a thief. We'll say that he doesn't understand. And so, are there adults that have the intellect of a child? Yes. And so, when we look at special needs, so for example, if an autistic person, took the phone, we wouldn't say that, oh, this person, he's a thief and he needs to go to jail. We'll say he doesn't understand. Okay. And the phone was not in a protected place. He did not try to do this. So there is no obvious ill intent here. Okay. Yes, it is something valuable and it belongs to somebody else, but it wasn't protected, and this person didn't take it in a secretive manner. So we can make a case. Okay. If you're the lawyer, you can say, okay, now I have to examine the intellect of this person. Is this person that I'm trying to represent? Is this person does the person have a normal intellect, or are they have an abnormal intellect? And based on that, then the case, and this is what the judge is going to try to determine. Okay, is that okay? Or am I talking to somebody here who understands? And so, if it's, of course, if it's a special needs person, could be even 30 or 40 years old, but they don't understand. Okay, and they know phones are where you play games, and that's what they know about phones. Or they might know, oh, the phone is what I used to call my family, and so here's a phone. And so a person like that might say, oh, I thought Allah gave it to me because I was a good person today and I did something good. So in that case, we say, oh, it's normal. But if it's somebody who is clearly, educated and sane, from an Islamic standpoint, they are accountable, then this is obviously no sane, accountable person would say that. Okay, but you see now how we have to go through the information. Are you getting an appreciation for that now? How this lack of clarity, it can lead to multiple outcomes, right? So the kleptomaniac, okay, the kleptomaniac is he not accountable for his behavior? Does he not know what he's doing is wrong, or he knows that what he's doing is wrong? He knows. He knows that it's wrong, but he has difficulty fighting the urge to do the wrong. And so, but it's still wrong, right? And so he is still accountable because of that, because he knows it's wrong and he has to resist it. And so, and this can be for any type of addiction. So a person who has any type of addiction, just because he has that addiction doesn't license that person to do that which is wrong. Okay. So, and so that's the whole difference, is that when we start, but if the person meets all four categories, wait a second, now this is very clear. There's no defense at that point in time. Okay, this is very, very clear. The person who went into the house and robbed the house from going into the safe, none of this was accidental. Okay, it could also be one case that you guys didn't present was, what if somebody took the phone accidentally thinking it belonged to them. Okay. Sometimes we're distracted, all of us. Any average person can be very distracted. And you see the phone, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I left my phone on the table. And he puts the phone in his pocket. Okay. And as he's walking away, someone says, hey, you stole my phone. And he turns around and says, oh my God, you're right. I thought it was mine. Is that possible? Is it possible that he did that by accident? Or no way? This has to be, he was stealing it. It's possible, right? And so it could be that could be a defense, okay? That I apologize. Well, as soon as I got home and I realized it's not my phone, I tried to turn on the phone. I realized this is not my screen. It belongs to somebody else. And then after that, I went to the police station. And I tried to to turn the phone in because it was just all by accident. It's truza here. They all look very similar. So the question then is that what did you do afterwards? Okay. So if the person held onto the phone for 3 or 4 days, then the likelihood that it was an accident becomes more clear or less clear. Or is it more likely that it was an accident the longer the person holds on? Yeah, it's less. Okay, now you should know. Okay, if you had the phone in your pocket for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, yeah, we can say that it was an accident. Okay, you didn't mean it. It was a harmless mistake. But then if you kept the phone for a couple of days, then it's pretty obvious. You're going to be using the phone, and you're going to know that that's not your phone. Okay. So that's the questions that we have. So you see here that without this detail, I can't make a ruling. I have to have this information. Okay. Whereas with the first case that I told you, the man who goes into the house at night and he steals from a safe, I have all the information. It's impossible to be a mistake. It's impossible to be an accident. Nobody's going to go into a house and remove and open a safe by accident. A person who is insane or a person who has special needs is not going to do that. So a person there, so it becomes very, very difficult to find a reason for that that is not haram, right? So that's the concept here. Now the other presentation, or the case which is mentioned here, is okay. What about the home invasion? Okay, so now a person breaks down the door and they enter a house with weapons. Maybe they have multiple people, okay, and they are interested in taking everything of value from that house, meaning that they're not going after the safe, they're going after everything. They want to take the cash from the wallets, the credit cards, all the jewelry, all of the silverware that might have value, anything in the house that has value, okay? If there are people in the home, will the people realize that these thieves are in the house? Of course. If somebody broke down the door and there's several people going through and they're scouring the house, for sure the inhabitants of the house will know. So is this a theft? Would these people be convicted of stealing? No. What would they be convicted of? No. It becomes. So is it lower? Is the crime here bigger or smaller than stealing? Higher. Okay, much bigger. So now, because there's harm being implied right now, this is a situation where you've terrorized this family. Okay, these people are going to be traumatized after this situation. Okay, even if they ended up taking nothing, even if they went through the house and they said we couldn't find anything of value and they left. Okay, but they ransacked the house. Okay, they terrified the inhabitants. Okay, so the punishment for these people when they're caught is going to be more than the punishment for theft. Okay, it would actually be. And does anybody know what this is called in Islam? What's what crime this is in Islam? This is called the crime of haraba. Haraba. Okay, and so there is a had punishment for it, yes, but it is haraba. And so haraba, it means terrorism, okay? Terrorizing people. And so there is, this is something which is found in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and it has a variety of punishments for it, depending on the level of the crime. But you see here that, okay, they went in, and so it meets the criteria of theft, okay? All right. So they're taking something of value. Okay. So they went into a house and they maybe took some jewelry or took some cash. Okay. It belongs to somebody else. Okay. Check there. It's taken from it's protected place. They entered somebody's home and to take it. So they entered someone's home illegally to take it, and they tried to do it in a secretive manner in the sense that they didn't want anybody, the police at least, to know, or anybody outside of the home to know. So it meets the criteria of theft, but it's higher than theft. This is a punishment which is higher. So again, this is where the qadi, or the Islamic judge, would have to look into this and say, no, 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 where this is no longer a case of theft, because there is more harm coming here, and there is the traumatizing of the people in the home, the terrorism involving other people of the home, the destruction of the property in the home. There's more here, right? So you see, this is where it becomes khafi. Make sense? And so that's what we're generally looking at. And so again, the muhkam is clear. It's easy. Anybody, you don't need a scholar to look at that. It's something which is clear. You have a definition, and it meets the definition, and we're done. It doesn't require any ability to do reasoning. Saying to reach that conclusion. So that's the khafi. Um, so going on with that, so some other questions: is a pickpocket a sariq? Okay, so the ulama are in agreement, unanimous agreement, the pickpocket is a sariq. But when we look at the pickpocket, okay, he's taking something of value, maybe, okay, that belongs to somebody else, definitely. Is it in its protected place? Depends on, again, we're going to talk about, is your pocket a protected place or is it not? Definitely he's doing it in a secretive manner. So you see how there is a little bit, there's some ambiguity or some vagueness, okay, when it comes to these types of things. So even though, so the reality of the act is theft, even though the name, okay, pickpocket, okay, is, so when the pickpocket is taking things, he doesn't know what he's taking, right? So does he know, like, if he takes your wallet, you know, your wallet might be empty, right? So you might have nothing in your wallet. You might just have your ID and your library card in your wallet with zero cash and no credit cards. Okay, so he doesn't know that. Okay, so so he's taking the card, but he doesn't know what's in it, or taking the wallet, doesn't know what's in it. And so the concept is, there value or there's no value? We don't know. So it depends. But nonetheless, even if he took your wallet, which only had your ID and your library card, he's still going to be guilty of theft. So in an Islamic and a Sharia court, he's guilty of theft, because his intention, in that case, his intention was to steal something of value. He just picked, the wrong person. What about the grave robber? People who steal the kafan. Okay, so you see that there is difference of opinion on this issue. So Abu Hanifa and one of his students, Ahmad, they said the grave robber is not sariq because there is a separate term for it. Number one, the stolen item, the kafan, has no value. Okay, it has really no owner, and it's not really kept in a safe place. The grave is not really something that we would call it a safe place. Okay, and so they ruled it is not sariqa. But Abu Yusuf, the student of Abu Hanifa, okay, and others concluded that they are sariq. Okay, so you see here that there can be difference of opinion on these types of issues. Kevin from a dead body, yes, and so there are some depraved people who do things like that. So before we go forward, okay, we need to understand the following, which is the categories of text and the impact of their rulings. So we have category A, which is a case which is clearly stated in the text and there is no difference of opinion. Okay, so we call this qat'i. Qat'i, which means definitive. Okay, and so qat'i comes from qata'a, to cut something. Okay, so if I cut something, I cut, I cut, for example, a piece of meat. Okay, it's definitive. Okay, you can see where the cut was made, and the two pieces are separate. Okay, there's no ambiguity. It's very clear. It's definitive. Okay. Category B is going to be a text which is not clear, but when we analyze it, we find out it is actually equivalent to A. Then the ruling of A applies to B. So the text may not be clear, but then when we look at it in further, part of the maybe an ayah from the Quran which is explained elsewhere or explained in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, okay, so on further analysis, we find out that it can rise to the level of A. Class C, the text has less in common with A, and it does not meet all of the criteria of A. So the ruling of A does not apply to C. So this is like the grave robber. Okay. So category A is what? Which example would that be that I gave you? Which would be qat'i definition or qat'i situation? No, the pickpocket will be, we might say that it might be B. Okay. So it's not clear, but when on further analysis, we find it is equivalent to A because of the intention. A would be the person who goes into somebody's house at night and steals something from their safe. Okay, correct? So that meets all the criteria, and there's no difference. Nobody's going to say this person's not, that he's not a thief. Okay, this is very clear. Okay, the person who enters the house, someone's house at night, secretively goes to their office, removes the picture from the wall, opens the safe behind the wall, takes the diamond necklace, and escapes from the window. This person is meeting all criteria. There is no difference of opinion on this issue. All the ulama will rule that this is a thief, correct? And so this is qat'i, okay? Qat'i. And so the pickpocket might be A, all right? I'm sorry, it might be B, as we mentioned. So C would be the grave robber, okay? So, it doesn't really meet the criteria because it's not really taking, it's not taking something that has any value. It's not taking something that's really owned by anybody. It's really hard to say that he's doing this in secret, or that, that it's in a protected place, you know, it becomes complicated, okay, at that case. D is the text has criteria of A and more. And this would be the example I mentioned of the person who enters the home and traumatizes the family. Okay, so he's doing all of the. So he's entering the home. Okay, he's going to a protected place. He's taking something of value. He's taking something that belongs to somebody else. Okay. The only thing is, it's just not. It's not doing it in secret, in the sense that he's trying to do it, of course, in the sense that that the police don't know, or the neighbors don't know, or that people. So the fact that the family is aware isn't an issue. Um, so this is A plus. Okay, that there's more happening here, and this could cause it to turn into a different category altogether. We're no longer talking about theft; we're talking about haraba, about terrorism, and this is the case of highway robbery. Okay, so highway robbery, a person is traveling. So let's say, make it a modern, okay, one that a person is traveling with their family in the car, and they're going in maybe a place that is doesn't have a lot of like going through uninhabited territory. So a robber comes out and stops the car, and they traumatize the family, and they say, "Give me all of your wealth," um, uh, and so forth. So there's a lot of possibilities here. Can rape happen in a situation like that? If there's a woman in that car, can she be raped? Yes, she can be raped. So now all of a sudden, now we're not talking about theft anymore. And this is exactly this is a conversation that the ulama had where they said, but in a case where there was a highway robbery and the woman was raped, but nothing was taken. Okay. So some of the ulama, they said, well, nothing was taken, so it's not classed as highway robbery. Okay. Would it be classed as zina? And so it was Abu Bakr subhanallah, I'll remember his name, inshallah. But one of the great ulama from the West Africa, from like the Moroccan territories. This is He mentioned that he said there was robbery. In fact, even though no money was taken, he said they took something from the woman. Okay, by raping her, they took something from her. They took her, her sense of her sense of security and things like that, and they took from her her you know her privacy and whatnot. Okay, so he ruled that this is harada, and that the person who does that, okay, is a rapist. Okay, not a highway robber, is a rapist, and his punishment should be that his arms and his legs um, would be cut off on opposite sides, and he would be crucified, which is the punishment for rape Islamically. So the punishment for rape Islamically would be crucifixion, or crucifixion plus cutting off the arms and legs on opposite sides. Okay. The least punishment would be exile. So you see how Islam deals with this type of a situation, subhanAllah. So you see how the D is going to be like, no, 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 we're not talking about this. We're not talking about theft here. We're talking about something completely different here. We're not talking about this case is not an example of it's an example of a whole different case, right? So that's the situation. So we call it qat'i dalala, okay? Qat'i dalala, which is a definitive indication, okay, or a clear indication. B through D are dhanni dalala. And so dhanni dalala means that it is an indication which is um, unclear, okay, or presumptuous indication, and that requires ijtihad. So as you can see, B, C, and D, they all require, and I gave you examples of ijtihad of the ulama. Make sense? Alhamdulillah, good. Okay. You guys are doing very well today, mashallah. Very well. All right. And so continuing then on that, we're going to go now to the second group. And so let's remember we were talking about these issues here, the unclear words. Okay. So now we're going to look at the mushkil. Is the word unclear, but its meaning can be determined by ijtihad, by human reasoning? Then we're going to look at the mushkil. Okay. So a mushkil term itself is not clear by definition. You have to determine the different possible meanings of the word. So the word or particle or the structure of the text is itself the problem. That means you have to look at the external things to determine its meaning. Trying to discover the meaning of mushkil is much more difficult than khafi. You need way more ijtihad, okay? And there is going to be the presumptuous indications or possible or suspected indications, dhanni dalala. And so this is going to take us into the realm of homonyms and metaphors. Homonyms and metaphors. Okay. So this is the mushtarik. And the mushtarik is going to be the homonyms. So one possible reason why the text would become mushkil is due to homonyms, which is called in Arabic mushtarik. And so words that have multiple meanings is very common in the Arabic language. And so what is the meaning of ayn? What is the meaning of ayn? Okay, so ayn could be an eye. It could be the Arabic letter, ayn. It could be a spring, water that's coming out of the ground, which is ayn. It could also mean spy, guard, self or himself. It could mean evil eye. It could mean the headlight of a car. It could mean the individual. So we say fard ayn. Okay. It is an individual obligation. Okay. So all these words, they are covered under the word ayn. So before, when we talked about sariq, okay, the thief, we know what that word means. It's very clear. Okay. There is not more than one meaning for the word sariq. And then we look at the word qatil, okay, killer or murderer. It doesn't have any other meaning. It only means that. So if you heard the word ayn, you wouldn't know the meaning without some context. Okay? You would need to have context. So if the context is provided, then the mushkil might disappear. The unclear becomes clear in that case. But if you don't have enough context, it can remain unclear. With me? All right. Now, another way that something can be mushkil, okay, is through metaphors, okay? So you might have literal, so you have literal meanings and you have metaphorical meanings that can also be contained in that word or that phrase. So always, and whenever you have the presence of a literal meaning, that should be the default, I'm sorry, unless you provide evidence otherwise. And so sometimes you have some metaphors that are so common that they reach the level of the literal meaning, meaning that almost everybody understands that to be the meaning of the word, even though it is metaphorical, not literal, but because it's so commonly used. Okay, but here again we get this lack of clarity. Okay, with the mushkil. So take an example. Okay. والمطلقات يتربصن بأنفسهن ثلاثة قروء. Okay. And the divorced woman, they should wait, okay, for 3 quru. So what is the quru or qur in this case? What does it mean? This word is not known. It is not a commonly encountered word. It's not it's very uncommon. Okay, so divorced women would enter waiting for 3 quru. Okay, their iddah is 3 quru. So it either means periods, the like menstrual cycles, menstrual periods, or it means a state of purity. Okay, a state where she's not menstruating. So which one is it? This is an example of the mushtarak text, and so you do not know the meaning of the word without understanding the context of the ayah. So you cannot understand the text without ijtihad. This is also an example where we see difference of opinion between the different schools of thought, the Shafi'is and Hanafis, for example. So here the woman is going to end her iddah either at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period. Okay, so the mujtahid here has to ponder and find out evidence for his understanding, and it is, as you can see, a very difficult process as compared to the khafi. We're not talking anymore about the khafi. We're talking about something that's a lot more complicated. So you have to look and see, is that word used by Allah or the Prophet ﷺ, in a different way or in a different context, so that it can help us to understand it. Okay. But it is complicated in that case. So what about the Hanafi viewpoint and their proofs? Okay, so the Hanafis, they look at this word qur, okay, and they say the word for menses in Arabic, quru, has multiple meanings, and so we have to go to the external sources. So determine first the term qur has been used by any other text. Okay? And they did find it in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ was discussing or used this word with Fatima bint Ubays, I'm sorry, and he used it to mean the period. When the Prophet ﷺ used it in the hadith, he used it with the meaning of period. And when you consider one of the main purposes of the iddah is to determine if the woman is pregnant or not. That's one of the chief purposes of having a 3-month time period between the statement of divorce and the application of the divorce, is to determine whether there is a pregnancy. So the occurrence of menses demonstrates in most cases that the woman is not pregnant, and you don't have to wait for purity. So you don't have to wait until the end of the period. Okay, because if she starts having a cycle, then she's not pregnant. And therefore, the key to the iddah is menses. And if the woman does not undergo period, then the iddah has to be 3 months. And that's in another case. So the women that don't have periods, they wait 3 months, okay, because that is equivalent to 3 cycles. So, seems pretty clear or not clear?
There's more.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. So is it clear? What do you? It seems clear, right? It seems clear here because you see. Okay, well, the Prophet ﷺ used this phrase, okay, in a hadith. So how could it be anything else, right? How? So remember, when we go back, let's go back for a moment here. So we go back to here. It either means either means a period, okay, a menstrual cycle, or a state of purity, one or the other. So it either means while the woman is bleeding or the woman is not bleeding. One of these. Okay. So here, Imam Abu Hanifa, he's saying, well, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says he uses this word qur in the reference to a period. And when we consider, again, we're using ijtihad, we're using our mind and using logical reasoning, we say, okay, the reason why, one of the reasons why Allah Azza wa Jal, He instituted the iddah is so that we can demonstrate that the woman is not pregnant. No, she has to wait three of them. Remember, so the ayah here is that as Allah mentioned here, ثلاثة قروء. Okay, يتربصن بأنفسهن ثلاثة قروء. So it is 3 qur, one way or the other. Okay, so but the question is it 3 periods of purity or 3 menstrual cycles? Okay, so clear, Sahira?
When does the menstrual cycle pass and then she end up pregnant, but they still want a divorce?
That's the difference. We're not. This is no longer a plural at that point.
Okay. Like, is a guy forced to stay with her?
That's it. That's another fiqh issue altogether. So now we're talking about. We want to understand this, the mushkil, which is the qur here. Okay. So qur then is it a menstrual cycle or a state of purity? So Imam Abu Hanifa, he seems to provide very convincing evidence. Okay, that it is reference to the menstrual cycle. Okay. So why would we think then that it has anything to do with period of purity or the time of purity? So we look at Imam Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i, he says, okay, when is it from the Sunnah, or is it a proper divorce to divorce a woman when she's on her period, or she should only be divorced when she's in a state of purity? State of purity. So the woman who is divorced in a state of menstruation, this is called what in Islam? Anybody?
I'm more useful.
It's called bid'i divorce. Okay, bid'i. So it's an innovative type of divorce. Bid'i divorce. Okay, so it is not an accepted form. Okay, it is a bid'i divorce. So the woman has to be, she has to be divorced in a state of purity. Okay, in the state of purity. So So here, when we go back, okay, when we look at the text again, we say, wait a second, okay. So when we're looking at Abu Hanifa's evidence, okay, we're saying that okay, if it is menstruation, okay, then then that means that the woman is being divorced in a state of menstruation, which is not part of the sunnah. So when he looked at it, he said proper divorce should occur in the state of purity. And so he's saying if the qur is the time of purity, then the time of purity is say it's approximately 20 days thereabouts. And let's say the woman she has 20 days of purity, 7 days of period as an example, okay, or 21 days of purity, 7 days of menstruation. Then all of a sudden, then if he divorces her on the 19th day, okay, of her purity, one day before her period comes, this counts as one qur. Okay, even so, it's going to be less than 3 months in that case. So, do you see now how this can create a lot of change in the, depending on the viewpoint that the person takes? Okay, it can create a very, very big difference. So, all of a sudden, a woman who is expecting to have 3 months, okay, to reconcile with her husband, now she only has 2 months and a day, or 2 months and a week, or something like that. Do you see? And so that's why and this is, and both of them, they have valid points. So Shafi'i's valid viewpoint is valid, okay, and Abu Hanifa's viewpoint is very valid too, okay. Now, which one, as you're going through this, as you get to the point where you start to understand these things, then all of a sudden um, the status of the mutaqallid, okay, which most of us are, okay. Mutaqallid means that we follow the opinion of the scholars. The scholar tells us this is what I see, and you follow it because you are unable to independently evaluate the evidence. But as you start to learn this, do you get to the point where now you can independently evaluate the evidence? What do you think? With this knowledge, are you able to independently evaluate the evidence?
No. Yes, but, mm,
Did I lose you guys? Remember, you're still in the taqlid, you're still in the mutaqallid phase, but you see now how you are getting to the point where you are able to evaluate the evidence on your own. So as you build more and more knowledge, then you will get to the point where you will say, I don't agree. For example, I am Shafi'i by my choice, or I have been a Shafi'i, but I don't agree with Imam Shafi'i's viewpoint on this case because of the fact that Abu Hanifa is using a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and that is stronger evidence than qiyas. Okay, because here essentially Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah is using some type of ijtihad with a basis of qiyas. Okay, all right. This is for. I hope you can follow what I'm saying. That he's using some ijtihad with the basis of qiyas. All right, and so you might say, wait a second here, but there's a hadith on this subject, the hadith of Fatima bint Ubais, that there is a hadith, so there should be really very limited discussion on this issue. So clearly, the correct viewpoint would be Imam Abu Hanifa, and so I'm not going to, as even though I'm following Imam Shafi'i generally, I'm not going to follow in this case because I have a stronger evidence. Does that line of reasoning make sense to you guys? Are you understanding where I'm coming? Okay. So again, you're not there yet. You're not there. Okay, but you are getting there. Any questions on that? Alhamdulillah. Okay, so but this helps us to understand the mushkil. Okay, so the mushkil becomes a little bit clearer. Now, how about the mujmal? Okay, so now let's go back to the beginning. Okay, where we see these definitions. So, is the word unclear and the meaning has been given by Allah? Then that text is mujmal. That's what we're going to talk about now. Okay, so the mujmal denotes a word or text which is inherently unclear and gives no indication as to its precise meaning. It may have several meanings, or it may be altogether an unfamiliar word, or the lawgiver. Who is the lawgiver? I'm using this term lawgiver. Who is that?
Oh.
So the lawgiver is Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? So the lawgiver is Allah. You guys with me on that? And so only Allah Azza wa Jal can give the law, right? Only Allah Azza wa Jal can reveal the law, nobody else. So the scholars can try to infer it or deduce it, but Allah Azza wa Jal is the one that gives the law. You guys all good on that? So that word, the mujmal word, may have several meanings, or it may be unfamiliar, or the lawgiver, Allah Azza wa Jal, may not have explained the word to clarify it. So, for example, the word salah. Okay, so when salah was revealed, okay, so we look at ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة. Okay, so what does this word salah mean? We don't have any idea what it means because Allah didn't tell us what it means yet. Okay, so the word is it's a just like when we're going through these, we're going through usul al-fiqh and usul al-hadith. There's a lot of terminology I'm presenting to you guys that is not known. You don't know what this word means. We're like, I have no idea. So we have to spend all this. So right now we're looking at the word mujmal. Okay, so before if I would have told you mujmal yesterday, you would say I have no idea what you're talking about. This is an unclear word to me. It doesn't have any meaning. And so now we're trying to build the meaning on that. So the same thing with this lingo like salah, hajj, riba, siyam, all these things. They're not known words. Okay, so they're in the Arabic language. They have kind of a little bit of an ambiguous meaning when it comes to to Islam. So the word siyam, it means abstaining. Abstaining from what? So in the Islamic sense, I don't know, right? It's a word that means abstaining. So if I say, inshallah, we're going to abstain, you're going to say what? You're going to abstain from what? I need more information. I can't, just that word by itself is not enough for me. I need further detail to be able to understand it. Correct? And so this is the mujmal, okay? So they don't have a clear meaning, okay, in lexically, okay? So in the Arabic language, they have a meaning, but it doesn't translate into something like clear, okay? It's ambiguous in terms of what is it referencing, what is it applying to. So it has a technical meaning, okay, mustalah, okay, Islamic meaning, which is given by Allah. So now you all know all these things. So you know salah, what it means. Salah, it's very clear. You go to any Muslim and you tell him, did you make your salah? He's not going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. This word is not clear to me. Okay? Do you mean this or this or this or that? He's not going to say that. If you go and you ask somebody right now, are you fasting? Are you hal anta صايم? Okay. So again, if we're looking at just the Arabic word abstention, essentially what I'm saying to the person is, are you abstaining? So again, if we don't have the Islamic meaning, the person might look at me and say, what are you talking about? What do you mean abstaining from what? But again, we go to any Muslim right now and we say, hal anta صايم? They say, نعم أنا صايم. شهر رمضان. I am fasting. It is the month of Ramadan, of course. So I'm not, it becomes very, very, very clear at that point in time. So Because Allah Azza wa Jal gave us that meaning. So these words have become totally clear or mufassar. Okay. Oh, let's go back now. So now we're going to go back to all the way to here, the clear words. Okay. So muhkam, remember we talked about that at the very beginning of this talk, is that it only has one meaning. There is no possibility for abrogation, no possibility for ta'wil. Mufassal is explained. A word that it became clear, not initially clear, but became clear because it was explained, Quran or Sunnah. So here we're talking about that here in this case, that these words have become totally clear or mufassal due to the explanations provided in the Sunnah. So we have the word salah in the Quran, but then we have the explanation provided in the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How about the word al-qari'ah? Okay, this word is completely mujmal. What does it mean? So you would go up to an Arabic person, okay, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and say, Al-Qari'ah. He was going to say, I have no idea what you're saying. And this is why Allah says, Al-Qari'ah, mal-Qari'ah. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا-Qari'ah. Okay, so Allah said, in of itself, it's there. Okay, Al-Qari'ah, mal-Qari'ah. What is Al-Qari'ah? And what will help you to know what is Al-Qari'ah, right? So all of this is present, okay? And so Allah Azza wa Jalla is explaining to us very clearly that case, that situation, so that it becomes apparent to us. So when we look into it, then I'll say, oh, okay, now I understand what al-qari'ah is because Allah Azza wa Jalla told me. Okay, al-qari'ah, mal-qari'ah, wa ma adraka mal-qari'ah, yawma yakunu an-nasu kal-farash al-mabthuth. It is the day in which people will become like the moths. Okay, and so forth. So Allah is giving me the explanation. So then I understand, this is one of the terms, one of the names of the Day of Judgment. It is a name for the Day of Judgment. And so Allah explained it. Okay. So it becomes clear. So which one is it going to be? Okay. From these categories. So Al-Qari'ah will be which one of these choices here on this slide? So the word al-qari'ah, okay, becomes which one of these choices? Which one of these four? Okay. Zahir, you think I'm al-Mufassir? What do you guys, what does everybody else think? Yusuf and Amira, what do you guys think? Okay. Another vote for al-Mufassir. Yusuf might be away from the computer. Okay. So it is Mufassir. Can it be Muhkam? That it only has one meaning? It's a bit harder to get that to that point, right? Because it's not going to be that that clear, right? So Allah has explained it, and all we know about Al-Qari'ah is what Allah told us about it. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily, we can't say that it has one meaning only because we don't know the word. Okay, so it is a word that's been further explained to us, and so we know only what Allah told us about it, right? So it wouldn't be on any of the other choices. Make sense? So, so if the explanation provided by the lawgiver Allah Azza wa Jal is insufficient, mujmal turns into mushkil, and now it becomes open to ijtihad and ta'wil. So now we go back to here. We go back to this one. Okay. That means Allah gave us some information, but not enough to reach the level of mufassar. So then it becomes mushkil. Okay, that we have now we have to use ijtihad and ta'wil to try to understand it further. Does that make sense? Sahira, good. Amira? Very good. You guys were doing very well. This is as I told you, this is complicated, very complicated stuff, but very important to understand because all these meanings we're building upon, as you guys have been doing very well today, mashallah. All right. So now we're going to finish off with some textual implications. So now a little bit more thought. Okay. So we're going to look at ibarat an-nas, which is explicit meaning. Okay. So remember, if we go back up to here, okay, an-nas, okay, is explicit. Okay. Ibarat an-nas. So ibara basically means a phrase. Okay. Okay. Ibara. Okay. So an explicit phrase, okay, or meaning. So the immediate meaning of the text derived from its obvious words and sentences, okay? So Allah's statement in Surah Al-Isra, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. Do not kill the soul which Allah has forbidden except by right. Okay, so is there anything in this which is unclear? Anything in that statement which is unclear? Anything in this ayah which is unclear? So here you think no. Ah, good, Amir. Very good. Excellent. Okay. What is the right? That is unclear. So, but is this right explained to me elsewhere? It is explained elsewhere. So we have lots and lots of details. And so we find elsewhere in the Quran when the person can be executed. We find in the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ the conditions where execution is permitted, okay? Where the killing is allowed in that case. Not by an individual, of course, by the government. And so only by, the government with, so there are all these prerequisites there. So we find out, so what we understand from this, okay, the explicit meaning in general here is don't kill people, okay? That's the obvious meaning which is here, okay? And so the right, okay, the right is not an individual right, or is it an individual right, or is it a governmental right only? Is it something I can take into my own hands, or the right is something that only the government can act upon? Government. Okay, so it's never, there is no situation in which the individual Muslim can take this into their own hands. They can't say, "Oh, Allah said that the person who commits zina should be killed, and I saw this person committing zina, so I'm going to go to his house and kill him." This is not Islam. This is a crime, and that person who did that would be guilty of a crime. He himself would be a murderer, okay? Because he does not have that right. This is not the right that is put in their hands. This is the right and it requires investigation. It requires, it requires a process, not just vigilantism, okay? So the general idea here from this ayah is, hey, Muslims, don't kill people. Okay? This is not something which you should be doing. This is a major sin. Stay away from it. Do not get to the point of doing so. So this is an explicit meaning, okay? Isharat al-nas, okay? Now we're talking about, so instead of the meaning being, clear, we're looking, or the phrase being clear, we're looking at something which is alluded to, okay? Ishara. So ishara is not, clear. So the meaning of the text that is not mentioned clearly but understood directly from the text, okay? أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَىٰ نِسَائِكُمْ. It has been made permissible for you the night preceding fasting to go to your wives. Okay? What is this talking about? This is something which is alluded to, and so it's not explicitly mentioned in the text, but it is clearly understood. What is it discussing? Very good. So that the intimacy between the man and his wife is permitted at night, okay, on the days of fasting. This is the case. And so why? Because this was in the very beginning, it was not allowed. In the very beginning, it was not allowed, and then Allah Azza wa Jal made it easy for the believers, and He allowed them to have this permission in the night hours. Okay, so we can see here that it is alluded to, and there is no confusion about it. Okay, it's not saying you can go and play chess with your wife at night. Okay, that now we made it permissible for you to go and play chess with her. Okay, this is talking about the thing that was previously forbidden. So the allusion here would be clear to anybody who has the background understanding. Okay, questions on these two? All right. So then we're going to go to دلالة النص and مفهوم الموافقة. Okay. Now we're gonna. This mafhum becomes a bit complicated. So dalalat and nas. Okay. So a dalala, it means an indication. All right. So the indication of the text. Okay. Or mafhum al muwafaqa, which all of this means the inferred meaning. Okay. Or the indicated meaning, a meaning that is derived through analogy. What is analogy in Islam? In the usul al-fiqh, what is it? This is a reference to what? What is analogy? So we talked about very good, excellent, Yusuf, good. Qiyas. So that's what we're talking about. So we're talking about through qiyas, a meaning that is derived through qiyas and the identification of an effective cause, which is in common between the explicit meaning and the inferred meaning. Okay? That is derived through inference. So, as for example, Allah's statement where He says, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Okay, so here Allah is talking about how to treat the parents. Okay, do not say to them even as much as uff. So don't say to them any word which represents displeasure or frustration with them. Okay, so how is this derived through analogy? Okay, I'll ask it to you a different way. So, good, Zahir. So you hit on the point. Okay, it's not the only word "uff." Okay, so "uff" is something in the Arabic cultures. Okay, but maybe in the American culture, somebody might say, um, "Okay, this is the sighing." Okay, so you see that kids do that all the time to their parents. The parents will say, "Go, you need to go and wash the dishes." Okay, so they're doing this sighing. Okay, so is that equivalent to off, or is it we say, oh, that's doesn't reach the level of off? It is, right? So how did you make that conclusion, Yusuf? That it's not included in the meaning. Yes, very good, Sahih. Okay, so by analogy, say both of them are uh, statements of what? So the sighing or the saying of off can be disobedience or can be what? What else? Irritation, good. So irritation, that irritating, like, why are you bothering me? Why are you, displeasure, excellent. All of this is that I'm not happy with what you're asking me to do, or I'm not happy with your request. Okay. And this is never should be shown to the parents. Okay. So the parents should be treated always with kindness, always with respect, always with contentedness. Okay. So anything which reaches that level, okay, so the ulama are unanimous in this, okay, because this is dalalat in this. The dalala here is that it's not the word of itself, it is the concept of the word of, which is don't disobey, don't show irritation, don't show displeasure, don't um, show any type, don't show the resistance to them when they ask you to do something. You should say حاضر. Immediately I'll do it. Yes, of course. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And go do it. It is that there should be no, kind of rebellion, and that's what's meaning. That's the meaning here. So that's the inferred meaning. And so we look at that, all of these together, so that anything, whatever culture that you're in, okay, whatever, language you're using, this can take multiple forms, and they all have the same ruling. Correct? With me? And then now we have iqtida and nas, okay, the required meaning, okay. As this is the meaning on which the text itself is silent, but must be read into it for it to fulfill the proper purpose. Okay? So Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ. Prohibited to you, okay, are your mothers and your daughters and your sisters, and so on in the ayah. Okay, a very long ayah in Surah An-Nisa. Prohibited for what? What are you prohibited from doing? To your mothers and your daughters and your sisters and your aunts, maternal aunts and paternal aunts, marrying. Okay, very good. So marriage is prohibited. It is not mentioned in the ayah though. Allah never said prohibited to you in marriage. Okay, but this is iqtida al-nas. Okay, iqtida al-nas, which is the meaning which the text itself is silent on, but must be read into it for it to fulfill the proper purpose. Okay. And so all these things again these are things that are part of what the scholar has to understand in evaluating the text, evaluating the Quran or the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. Now we come to mafhum al-mukhalafa. Mafhum al-mukhalafa is something which is widely used by Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali scholars. Not as much use by the Hanafi scholars. Okay, so some of the Hanafi scholars do not accept this at all. And so, mukhalafa, it means to go against. Mafhum is understanding. So it is an understanding which goes against the explicit text. Okay, or we say divergent meaning. So a meaning derived from the text in such a way that it diverges from the explicit meaning thereof. Okay? So let's take a look at Surah An-Nisa. وَإِذَا ضَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَقْصُرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ إِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَن يَفْتِنَكُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Okay? So Allah is telling us here, and when you travel, okay, throughout the earth, there is no harm upon you if you shorten your prayers, if you are afraid that the disbelievers will put you to trial. You are allowed to shorten your prayers while traveling if you are afraid that the disbelievers will put you to trial. Okay? That is the explicit meaning. All right. So the question then is, if there is no fear that means I don't shorten my prayer? Well, you guys are Muslim. You guys have been Muslim for a long time. You're still allowed to shorten your prayer, you're saying Zahir. So, but the Quran doesn't say that. The Quran is saying very clearly that you can do that when you're afraid. So how can you come to this conclusion that I am allowed to shorten my prayer irrespective of the fear? Very good. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we have the evidence of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we have numerous hadith on this subject, and that this is the rukhsa, or this is the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal, or the gift of Allah Azza wa Jal for the traveler, that he is allowed to shorten his prayers, or he should shorten his prayers. This is the license that Allah has given to us. So so you can see here that the understanding that we have as Muslims, it diverges from or it somewhat goes a little bit against the actual text of the Quran. Correct? Does that make sense? Yusuf and Amir, what do you guys think? So the question then is, okay, so why did Allah reveal the ayah this way? If we're going against the apparent text, why was it revealed this way then? So battle is different. There's a different type of shortening in the battle. Okay. The concept here is that the indication, the first time the Muslims were given the permission to shorten the prayer, okay, was in this case. So it's not about persecution, correct? But battle, no, because remember that there is the prayer during war is different. It's not the exact same. Okay. So So what happened was, initially it was permitted to the Muslims for this reason, and then Allah expanded it, okay, out of His mercy to the Muslim, to make things easy upon them. He expanded it. Okay, so this is not this. So this shows kind of the presence of Allah's mercy in that case. So Amira, depending on where, so how far does your mom live from you?
Abroad.
Like,
It's
do you
not.
have different
Yeah,
country?
yes.
Okay. If that is no longer your home, okay, meaning like where your mom lives, that you don't consider that your home, meaning that you have your own apartment where you live now, or if you're married and you're living with your family, and that's your home, and you go back to visit your mom, yes, this is travel, okay? But if, for example, you are normally living with your mom, okay, and you traveled for a couple of weeks, to go on, to take a class, or to go for a holiday or a vacation, and then you go back home to your mom, then that's your home. So the, the difference. So I'm assuming that wherever you live now, that is your home, and you go to visit your mom in another country, and that is just for the purpose of visitation. Then you would shorten your prayer. The question is, depending on how long you stay. That's the question. So there is difference of opinion between the ulama. This is one of those issues where we actually go back to this issue here, which is the mushkil. Okay, it is a mushkil issue, that there is no clear text on it, on the shortening of the prayer. in terms of how long you're allowed to do it. And so the scholars are differed in their opinion. So you have all the way from 2 weeks, okay, the Hanafi position, all the way down to 3 to 4 days, which is the Maliki and Shafi'i position. And so it depends on how long you're going to visit your mom would be the answer to that question. So if you're going to stay, for example, for more than 2 weeks, then all the scholars would be in agreement that if you're visiting your mom for more than 2 weeks, then you can shorten the prayer on your journey. But when you arrive to her house, then you pray as a resident if you are staying more than 2 weeks. And then depending on your particular madhab that you follow, it would be then there's going to be some difference depending on less than 2 weeks, if that makes sense to you. تمام. Okay, so this is mafhum al-mukhalafa. Okay, so you see here that the meaning derived from the text diverges from the explicit meaning. Okay, so mafhum al-mukhalafa doesn't apply in every case. Okay, so we have ayat in Surah At-Tawbah, for example, عدة الشهور عند الله 12. And so the number of months with Allah is 12, 4 of which are sacred, so avoid committing acts of oppression therein. And we also have the ayah about riba, إضعافا مضاعفة, that's يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة. All you who believe, do not devour interest, doubled and multiplied. Okay, so this ayah specifically. So the question then is, if we're going to look at the text, okay, O you who believe, do not devour interest, doubled and multiplied. What is the exact explicit meaning which is mentioned in this ayah? Don't consume interest. Okay? That's the inferred meaning, but that's not the explicit meaning. What is the explicit meaning? So here you're saying that a person should not consume any form of interest. But the ayah is telling us, very good. So it's saying here, don't take interest if it's double or more than that. Okay. So the person, I'm giving you $100, okay, and I'm asking you to pay me back $200, or asking you to pay back $300. Okay. Now this is double or multiplied. Okay. So does this ayah then mean that it's okay if I take less than that? So if I say I'm giving you 100, but I want you to give me back 150, it's not double, it's not multiplied. So does that make it halal? This is the explicit meaning, or that's the question that comes from the explicit meaning, right? So, and that's the issue here, is that the correct understanding of this ayah, okay, is do not consume interest at all. So why did Allah say doubled and multiplied? Because this ayah was describing the custom or the practice of the time when an individual who borrowed money and was unable to pay it at the end of the year, the riba was doubled and so on for the next year, became compounded. Okay, so this was the practice of that time. We don't apply mafhum al-mukhalafa in this case because Allah is describing that. So he's saying that specifically this is haram. So compounding interest is haram, and furthermore, but in any case, we have the other ayat which talk about that all of the zina, all of the riba is haram. Okay, there is nothing which is acceptable in that case. Okay, now there are conditions therein for mafhum al-mukhalafa. There's actually a lot of conditions. I tried to make it a little bit simpler for you guys in the sense instead of giving you all 11 conditions, which is complicated. So we have, as an example, the the custom of that time, which we just talked about. Okay, you can't apply mafhum if a number is used in the ayah for the purpose of exaggeration. So Allah says to the Prophet ﷺ, "In tastaghfir lahum sab'ina marra." If you were to ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will still not forgive them. So does that mean that if the Prophet ﷺ asked forgiveness for them 100 times, Allah will accept it? He just won't accept it up to 70? So that doesn't, because here the case is, it's not applied in this case. Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us that no matter how many times you ask, so the 70 that's used here is used in what sense? That it doesn't matter how many times. So it's used as in the case of there is no number that in which Allah will forgive them. Okay, so 70 was used as a huge number. Okay, and that's the case. If the condition or stipulation of the text is targhib or targhib is to encourage a good deed. Targhib is to warn against sin or punishment. If the condition or stipulation of the text is that, then you cannot apply mafhum al-mukhalafa. Okay, so we come back to this other ayah. عدة الشهور عند الله 12. For the number of months with Allah is 12, 4 of which are sacred, so avoid committing acts of oppression therein. You cannot commit acts of oppression in the 4 sacred months. Does that mean that I can commit acts of oppression in the other 8 months? It's okay. I can go ahead and sin. I can relax with committing sins in the other 8 months. Right. So that's the idea. But but again, this is remember that's the explicit text here. Okay, and so that's the explicit text, but that's not the intended meaning of it. Okay, so acts of oppression are forbidden all times, but they're even more serious in that time. They're more serious in that time. Okay. So what about the ayah where Allah Azza wa Jal, He says that giving the maintenance to the divorced woman, it is a condition upon the tarhib is to essentially warn against the punishment for doing a certain deed. So there are certain ayat and hadith which are targhib, that they encourage us to do good deeds, and others which encourage us to avoid punishments. Okay, so that's targhib. Okay, so the one who so targhib would be, for example, وَالسَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ فَقَطَعُوا أَيْدِيهُمَا, that the male thief and the female thief cut off their hand or amputate their hand. So this is a form of that. Okay. So when we consider the ayah, for example, where Allah says, حافظوا على so in the ayah which is وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And for the divorced woman, she is entitled to maintenance, okay, according to that which is customary. Okay, so whatever is customary in that time or in that place. Okay, so for example, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was maintenance was some dirhams. Okay, so you can't say, well, in the time of the Prophet, it's the Sunnah of the Prophet, he never paid more than 100 dirhams for maintenance, and so that's all I'm paying. Okay, you can't say that because that's not customary for the time. So this is arfi meaning, okay? So it has to be customary to your time. So what is normal maintenance, okay? Allah is saying for the mutallaq, for the woman who's divorced, there is maintenance according to that which is customary. حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُحْسِنِينَ. It is a right, okay, or it is an obligation upon the muhsinin, the doers of good. So can a person get divorced from his wife and say, to be honest, let's be honest, I'm not a muhsin. Okay, so I don't have to pay her anything because this is only for the muhsinin, and I'm not one of them, so I don't owe her anything. No, you can't say that. The Allah Azza wa Jalla is encouraging us. This is targhib, or is it tarhib? Which one is it? Targhib or tarhib? Targhib, very good. So Allah is encouraging us. Okay, He's saying this is a good deed. That when you do that, you will be among the muhsinin. A person who does that, he is classified among the doers of good because he is doing something which is otherwise not typical. Okay, so we see here that these are the conditions where they're not applicable. Any questions on that? On mafhum al-mukhalafa? We're almost done. I know you guys must be very tired like me. No, we're almost only 3 more slides. Yusuf, Amira, you guys are good? Okay, so now when we come to types of mafhum al-mukhalafa, okay? Amira, I hope you're good, inshallah, as well. So we have mafhum as-sifa, okay? So this is when the ruling of a text is dependent on the fulfillment of a quality or an attribute, then the ruling in question prevails only when that quality is present, otherwise it doesn't apply. So in the grazing sheep, there is zakah. In the grazing sheep, there is zakah. Okay? So, Yusuf, how much zakah are you going to pay on sheep this year? Because here the Prophet ﷺ is saying in this authentic hadith and Muwatta Imam Malik that you have to pay zakah on the grazing sheep, the sheep that's out in the field grazing. So how much zakah you will pay this year, Yusuf, on that? You won't pay in sheep. You will pay in something else?
Right.
You will pay in camels? Or goats? No. Do you have sheep that you're going to pay zakah on them? Okay, if you don't have, then it's not applicable to you. It's not applicable to you, right? So that's the point here, is that this doesn't apply. If you don't have sheep, okay, then this hadith does not apply to you. Okay. So this is mafhum as-sifa. Okay. So the concept here would be that I don't have sheep, or if I don't have sheep to reach the nisab, okay, so as a result, I don't owe any zakah because I don't meet the attribute or the quality that's present here. Okay, make sense? So, okay, so now we have mafhum ash-shart. Okay, so now we're talking about shart as condition. Okay, and so when the ruling of a text is contingent on a condition, then the ruling prevails only in the presence of that condition. Otherwise, it lapses. So we have the statement of Allah in Surah Al-Imran, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And the pilgrimage to the house is a duty unto Allah for mankind, for him who can't afford the journey. Okay? So the shart here is what? What is the condition in this case? Good, the one who can afford the journey. So here Allah is telling us that you have to make Hajj if you can afford it. Okay, what if I can't afford it? Then I don't have the condition isn't there, so it lapses. Their obligation lapses from me because I don't meet the condition. You're not required. It's not a requirement. You will not be held accountable on the day of judgment if you don't have the conditions, the means to go. So you cannot afford it. All right. Allah Azza wa Jalla's statement: if they are pregnant, then provide them with maintenance until they deliver. وَإِن كُنَّ أُولَاتِ حَمْلٍ فَأَنفِقُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ حَتَّى يَضَعْنَ حَمْلَهُنَّ. Okay. So this is talking about divorce. So the pregnant woman who is divorced, okay, her iddah is until she delivers. And so that means that the man has to continue to provide for her until she delivers. Okay. So can a woman who is not pregnant, okay, come and she is divorced by her husband, she comes and says, hey, you owe me 9 months of maintenance. Will that be applicable? No, because she's not pregnant. Okay. So you see here that these are the shurut, okay, the conditions that have to be met. And so if the condition is not there, okay, then there is no applicability, okay. The ruling only exists in the presence of that condition, right? And so the pregnant woman in this case, the iddah for her is until she delivers, and that iddah might be up to 9 months. Okay, so but that's not the iddah for any other woman. So this is something which is unique to her. Then we have mafhum al-ghaya. So when the text itself has an extent for the ruling, this ruling applies only within the scope of the stated limits, and when the limits are passed, then the rule is surpassed. Okay. Okay. وكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر. Eat and drink until you see the white thread distinct from the black thread. Okay, so this is a reference to what? This is a reference to fasting in Ramadan, okay, or fasting in general, but the ayah itself is about Ramadan. So what is the white thread?
Sun.
Does it mean I have to hold a very good daybreak? Okay, so it is right. So if you're in the desert, okay, or out on the sea, where you can see the horizon clearly, okay, and there's no obstruction with the horizon, what happens is the dawn or the coming of Fajr, okay, what happens is that it truly is white. It's not yellow or anything else. Yellow only comes when the sun is really much closer to the horizon. But what you start to see is that it's completely pitch black, and then you start to see just a small white light that looks like a line. Okay, so it looks like a thread. And so this is so that's the concept here is that I'm allowed to eat and drink until I see that. Okay, once that limit is met, then the ruling disappears. Okay, then I can no longer eat once I see that, once that's visible. So that's the mafhum al-ghaya. Okay, questions on that? So the white thread, as I said, it's not. So Allah here is giving us a metaphorical. This is metaphorical, right? So it's not actually white thread. It is seeing daybreak on the horizon. So as I mentioned, if you're out in the desert or on the sea at night, it'll be pitch black. It'll be absolutely just complete darkness. Okay. As we near the daytime, okay, what's the very first sign that day is about to break, okay, or the first sign that Fajr has entered, is that you start to see some light right on the edge of the horizon. So if you were out in the desert or out on the sea, you would see just some small amount of white. Okay, you do it according to the schedule, but where does the schedule come from, Amira? How do we create the schedule? No, like where did the schedule come from? Who wrote it down and things like that? Like who came up with these timings? So these timings are consistent with what's actually happening, right? So you're giving me all the immediate things, but the app and the phone and the paper schedule, all of these things, they come from the actual sighting, right? So there's scientifically we know when this exactly occurs, and so that's how this information is put onto the app or onto the time schedule, right? So that we know that. But so back before we had all this technology. Okay, so now we don't rely on this anymore. Okay, but before, and then not very long ago, maybe just 100 years ago, people had to see this. Okay, they had to go and they had to look at it. Jazakallah khair. So is that the? I'm assuming that's the white thread, Zahira, that you're posting. MashaAllah. I'll be happy to look at it. Good. Any other questions on this? Good, Amira? Okay, tamam, all right. I'm gonna say, I assume that's no questions, not that you're not good. All right, and then lastly, we have mafhum al-adad. This is when the ruling of a text is conveyed in terms of a specified number. The number stated must be observed. Okay, so in the Hadith of Bukhari, for every 5 camels that you own, okay, you give a sheep in zakat. All right. Or Allah's statement in Surah An-Nur, الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة. The adulteress and the adulterer, they should be whipped 100 times each. Okay? So the number is exact. So you can't say, well, I'm just going to whip them 10 times because I kind of feel bad. I don't want to. I kind of feel bad if I do more than that. It's not about how you feel. It's about you're applying a number. Okay. You can't say, well, I have 6 camels, and so I'm just going to give, this, or I have, or somebody can't come and tell you, well, you have 4 camels, and 5 is an approximation. No, it's not an approximation. This is specifics. Okay. So it has to be the specific number. So it has to meet that exact number when we're talking about rulings. Okay, so all this is talking about rulings. Okay, so that's the presentation. So as I mentioned to you guys, it's a lot of information in today's usul class, but inshallah you did. I'm very proud of you guys. You all did very, very well, mashallah. You did really well. So my question to you then, do you have any questions? Yeah, it did. It took the complexity of hadith, subhanAllah. All right. Well, I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla, inshallah, to bless your fasting and to accept it from you and to make it easy upon you. Allahumma ameen. And inshallah, we'll meet next week and continue, inshallah, next week, بإذن ta'ala. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Sister Layla, if there's any questions from your side, I can hang out for just a second. All right. Inshallah, I assume that means everyone is okay, and I appreciate all your attention. I know it was a long class, and you did excellent. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.